The E-Block SHS in the Adansi South District was constructed by previous NDC administration. The facility remains abandoned to the disappointment of NDC leaders who visited the area. National organizer of the party, Joseph Yamin, is unhappy the school block has been left since the NDC government left office.
I saw the start of the project as a deputy minister. I know the speed to which the contractors worked on this project. To the point that in 2016, before we went to do the election, this was the state it was. Not as bad as it is, though, but at least it was. In fact, this building has accommodated BEC candidates for some 3 years. It's only last year, and last year they couldn't come simply because the state of it now is bad. And so, if you have a facility like that and people are still sitting under trees going to school, it makes you very sad. If you were part of the formative stage of this and you now come to see that it's been abandoned, definitely you will not be a happy person. You are not happy people at all. Unfortunately, it's deteriorating. All the roof are coming down. The building is being taken over by rats and grass cutters.
Ashanti Regional Deputy Secretary of the NDC, Ban Echamfo, says the failure of the government to complete the E-Block for habitation is a deliberate act by the present government.
There are several schools around this community running shift system. Meanwhile, there's a completed block rotting just because a government had decided that children should keep going to schools under trees. We are pleading to the government and the education minister that students are crying. There are people who have completed the training colleges, teachers who did education in various universities. They need schools. They need to be posted. If this school were opened 2-3 years ago, these teachers will not be at home. So we are pleading to the government to come to the aid of the people around New Edibiase.
Some party executives also lamented the delay in completion of the project.
Now, District Chief Executive for Jasican, Elizabeth Ajono, has challenged the claims of the minority in Parliament that government has neglected the municipality. The committee was on the Agenda 111 site at Jasican and realized that not much work had been done on the site after the contractor took $1.2 million from government to mobilize. According to the DCE, the contractor left the site temporarily awaiting the test results of the soil sample after it realized the ground for the project was swampy.
Our attention has been drawn to the Agenda 111 hospital project in Jasican and other developmental projects in the municipality as a whole. The story is purported to have been said and contended, among other things, that the site for the hospital project has only been cleared after the contractor has been paid for mobilization by the government. This came to the fore when the minority members of the Health Committee of Parliament paid a courtesy call on the traditional leaders of Jasican ahead of their visit to the Agenda 111 project site in Jasican. It must be stated in clear terms that the Agenda 111 project has not been abandoned as reported. The then Jasican district was originally not part of the list of beneficiary districts to benefit from this monumental project. However, through an appeal made to the President by some illustrious sons of Gwen, led by Dr. John Eliza, and the land the President has for the area, the then district was added to the list of beneficiaries. The project was awarded and site was handed over to the contractor. However, after possession of site by the contractor, it was detected that the site was slopey and swampy and needed to be re-engineered to accommodate the project. Hence, the need for the cut and fill.
The Langpantanang Medina Municipal Assembly of Teachers says it has put in place measures to guarantee that the local area's educational standards are improved. The area has seen a decline in its educational fortunes for some time now, and the move is expected to improve the educational outcomes. At a stakeholders engagement forum held for head teachers and school improvement support officers in the Lanquantanang Medina Municipal Assembly, the Human Resource Director, Angela Frimpong Kansa, was optimistic that the measures would yield positive outcomes. There is more in this report put together by Jacqueline Ansoma.
The teachers in the Lanquantanang Medina Municipal Assembly say they are making effort to improve the quality of education in the area. Director of the Human Resource at the Ghana Education Service, Angela Frimpong Kansa, at the Stakeholders Engagement Forum, disclosed that the teachers and the school improvement support officers should liaise with community members to help improve the education outcomes in the municipal assembly.
One, it depends on the head teacher, how the head teacher plans, how the head teacher will organize the resources available to him or her, how the head teacher will communicate government policies to stakeholders, and then how he himself or the head teacher will improve upon himself, his worth, to bring all stakeholders together to improve education in the municipality. Everybody is involved: the parents, the teacher, the students, the head teacher, the director of the directorate, the CISOs.
Municipal Director of Education of the Lanquantanang Municipal Assembly, Ken Ejeapia, indicated that these forums enable teachers and the assembly to communicate more effectively to address pressing issues.
This engagement has brought the assembly to the doorsteps of the school, where management of schools are able to meet MCE and then air out their views, the challenges that education is facing, and then the way forward. We are going to look at it and then see what is within the domain of the directorate, that's to the head teachers and then the director, what we can do for ourselves. Then we do that one to improve, but then what is beyond us, then we take it up for management to look at it and see the way forward. For instance, like monitoring of schools, teachers and those things. I think that one is within our domain, which we can do. So that one, we'll look at that one from within.
MCE for Lanquantanang Medina Municipal Assembly, Jennifer Dede Ejabing, assured teachers of the Assembly's commitment in ensuring all issues of concern are addressed and put into practice.
But at the end of it all, I want it to be that we engaged and we've seen improvement. So I don't intend this discussion to just be a discussion that we've come to meet, just engagement without solutions. So from here, we are going to be working closely with the head teachers and then the circuit supervisors to ensure that they are all playing their role, and also largely the teachers in the various schools also playing their role to give the best in terms of education to our children within the municipality.
Teachers in attendance were optimistic that engaging in activities like these on a regular basis will improve the quality of their work. Jacqueline and Sumaya Boas report for JoyNews.
And that's it, Ghana, for the news. But up next, we serve you the news review. It's 34 minutes off the top of the hour. Thank you for staying with us for the news review. We're joined by political scientist, director of the Center for European Studies at the University of Ghana. I'm talking about Dr. Kwame Asante. Doc? Okay. So right before we get to Dr. Kwame Asante, he'll be joining us shortly. The news review on the AM show is brought to you by Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. Free prostate screening and free female fertility screening are to be delivered, and the locations are Accra, Spintex opposite the Shell signboard, Kumasi, Kronum, Abuehia behind Angel Educational Complex, Takrade in Anaji Estates in Tema Community 22 to be specific, in Techiman Hanswa and Isiama in Zema. You can call them on 0244 867 068 or 0742 234-321. That is 0274-234-321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic at the end to chronic disease. And that is Endpoint. They are making it possible for us to bring you the AM show this morning. We'll be joined by Dr. Kwame Asante shortly, but let's see what the papers have for us this morning. Starting with the Daily Graphic newspaper, rent support scheme launched, that's according to Vice President Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, and this is an interesting one. We flip-flopped, dilly-dallied, vacillated, done everything when it comes to rent issues. And when you go out there and speak to the ordinary Joe, they'll tell you about the crisis of renting, especially noting that rent, the cost of living, and especially rent, is one of the highest anywhere you would go in Africa and even across the world. When Michael Blackson, the American comedian, the American Ghanaian comedian came to Ghana, he made mention of the fact that he was shocked to the bone, basically, at the cost of property in Ghana and what that could do in the United States. So with all of this, it's very difficult to acquire property, very difficult to acquire land, and even if you get land, there's a whole lot of, it's a complicated mess. I know someone currently in Ibri who has had to lodge a police complaint over a similar issue. With all of these dynamics and, landlords and landladies insisting that people pay for 2 years, in some instances, if it's a shop, 5 to 10 years, how really can we sanitize the system? Rent control, I don't see what they're doing. I'm sorry. And there are so many dynamics at play and people are bleeding. So this, I'll take it with a pinch of salt and see what comes out of it. But I'll bring you details of that story on page 16 of the paper. Domestic debt exchange program. Individual bondholders get revised offer and the deadline has been extended. The 75% TVET curricula outdated. That's according to a study. And it appears the Education Ministry has a whole lot of work to do. Recently we had, and we still have, Ghana schools of shame on us, all of us, for what we allow our children to go through. When they're crawling on the floor like lizards to study, how do we expect them to match up with those in other jurisdictions? And I'm not even talking about the West. Right here in Africa, how can we do that to our children? Are these the leaders we would want to see tomorrow? What kind of leadership would they be able to deliver with that kind of background? So we have a whole lot to do. Registrar General strikes out defaulting business names. That story on page 20 of the paper. Let me say a very good morning to Dr. Kwame Asante. Doc, thank you for joining the conversation.
Good morning, Ben.
It's really good to have you. I hope you woke up on the right side of your bed this morning.
Yes.
Great to hear. Great to hear. Well, I started with a few headlines, and I'm going to get into the stories now. Starting with 75% TVET curricula outdated according to a study. So according to the study, 75% of the curricula of technical and vocational education and training institutions is outdated. A skills gap analysis between 2018 and 2022 has revealed. The analysis, which was matched with an audit of 10 economic sectors, showed that within the period, there was also an ineffective mode of teaching at the various TVET institutions, which adversely impacted the productivity levels of graduates from those schools on the job market. The Director General of the Commission of TVET, that is the CTVET, Dr. Fred Che Asamoah, disclosed this at a media briefing on the first 5-year strategic plan, that is 2018 to 2022, for transforming TVET in the country. The plan is also expected to establish strong links between industry and TVET providers or academia. The analysis was to address issues of skills mismatch between training institutions and industry. Now to you, Doc, you're an academic. Looking at our technical, vocational education and training, I always go back to the likes of Switzerland and Germany. Their economies are basically held by these, the French would call them the Polytechnique, those institutions, technical institutions that are built their countries. In Switzerland, you can get a mechanic, but the quality of the mechanic, you can't, downgrade him in any way or denigrate him compared to a heart surgeon because he's a surgeon for a car. I look at our own system and the many gaps in here and the flip-flopping, the curricula not adequate, the end result not adequate. What do you make of the situation, Doc?
The only thing that comes to mind when you look at this thing is that we are not serious as a people. I want to be brutally frank about this because this is a very important concept that if you look at the idea way back from Kwame Nkrumah's era, where he built a lot of schools, including technical and secondary technical school, which I'm a product of, already as a tech, all right? It's just to ensure that they provide the necessary support for economic takeoff and all that. We have abandoned this. How can you sit down for the curricula to be outdated? Is it the case that there is no monitoring? Who is monitoring who? Do they go for, approval or updates or accreditation for that matter? Yeah, it's an indictment on a whole chain of officers who are in command, whose duty it is to ensure that these things get fixed. It is unfortunate, but it's not too late, because if we want to salvage the situation, we'll be able to do it. We need to put our acts together and make sure that we strengthen these institutions. Anywhere there are missing links, we try to provide the missing links and then let it work. It is doable. We can learn from best practices, and it's all over, and it is not out of our reach to be able to get this thing and then support this beautiful academic enterprise. This is the game changer. If you look at Professor, Boateng from Boateng, he has always been hammering on things like that. Professor Subote and the rest of them. So I believe that the time is now for us to reflect on all these things and then work to ensure that it succeeds. It's for our own benefit.
And even just to stay a little on that subject, even where we have the requisite skills, we talk about unemployment all the time, but there's also something called underemployment. So sometimes you have people with the skills, but there's a mismatch. So you have someone who has studied accounting to a high level, let's say tertiary level and beyond, yet the person can't secure a job related to his or her field, and so ends up, let's say, as a driver. And this is not to denigrate any job. But if you look at the skill the person has and what that person can contribute to our economy and what the person is doing, that is underemployment. And we have a lot of that as well in the system, because we don't know, for example, if you went to any institution in this country now and asked, let's say trades and industry, labor and employment, how many accountants is Ghana going to need in the next or in the course of this year to meet our accounting needs? How many engineers are we going to need? How many of this and that? You would not get any answers, because we simply do not know. And that is a part of the problem.
Yeah, data is a problem. And we are not ready. I see, Ben, if we are a people who are ready to get these things fixed, we'll be able to fix them, because there are experts around here, right in Ghana, who can assist us. There are, better examples or best practices elsewhere we can borrow from. Except that, yes, we talk about it a little, and then we forgot to go to sleep. And the next time the problem resurfaces, I think it doesn't do anybody good at all.
Let's get into some other stories and wrap with the Daily Graphic. Domestic debt exchange program, individual bondholders get revised offer. Deadline extended. And there's also that story, rent support scheme launched. Both of those stories on page 16. Let's take a quick look at them. So the government has agreed to offer all individual bondholders who are below the age of 59 new bonds with a maximum maturity of 5 years instead of the initial 15 years. It will also offer a coupon, that is interest rate of 10% for that category of bondholders should they decide to tender them for new ones. Similarly, all retirees, including those who will be retiring this year, will be offered bond instruments with a maximum maturity of 5 years instead of 15 years and a 15% coupon rate. The revised positions were contained in a statement the Ministry of Finance issued in Accra yesterday. Now, in terms of the deadline extension, in view of the new development, the government has for the 4th time extended the deadline for the voluntary participation in the domestic debt exchange program by 7 days from yesterday, Tuesday. So yesterday was actually Tuesday, and it's been moved to next Tuesday, February the 7th. So a week's difference. The extended deadline also comes with a revised and final exchange memorandum, which the statement said would be released by tomorrow. For those who would voluntarily tender their bonds for new ones, a new settlement date of Tuesday, February 14 this year had been set, which would be confirmed via the new exchange memorandum, the statement indicated. So that's it with the debt exchange program. But quickly to the rent support scheme. A financial support scheme to cushion Ghanaians to meet their rent demands has been launched in Accra, known as the National Rental Assistance Scheme. The intervention is expected to provide low-interest loans for qualified applicants to enable them to pay their rent advance. And the Vice President, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, who launched the scheme in Accra yesterday, said the government had set aside 30 million Ghana cedis as seed money towards the implementation of the scheme. He said the scheme would be rolled out initially in the Greater Accra, Ashanti, Western, Eastern, Northern, and Bono East regions. He said the scheme would enable Ghanaians with identifiable and regular income to apply, and when approved, the rent would be paid directly to their landlords, who would also be required to register with the scheme. Not a bad start, but I asked myself, have we done due diligence fully, properly? 30 million Ghana cedis. Are we going to be able to track this properly and give value for money effectively and efficiently to Mother Ghana, to our citizens whose taxpayers are going to go into this enterprise? How are we going to ensure that this doesn't become another scheme for chop-chop? Foot soldiers going to benefit rather than the generality of the masses without a mask of MPP or NDC. How are we going to do that? And again, is this not just going to be more talk, the talk shop? We've heard things, especially with the Vice President, talk about rents this and we'll do this and do that. Till today, none of that has seen the light of day. Any quick reactions, Doc?
I want to believe that they want to make sure that this beautiful policy get started and started well. If you look at the MPP manifesto, this
We have a bit of a challenge with the connection to Dr. Asasante. We'll try to get him back and allow him to make his point there. In the interim, on page 17, talking politics, stop takeover of indigenous private banks, Ayariga to Bank of Ghana. And the National Democratic Congress Member of Parliament for Boku Central, Mahama Ayariga, has urged the Governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Ernest Anderson, to make concerted efforts to stop the possible collapse of the financial sector and the unjust takeover of indigenous private banks due to the implementation of the Domestic Debt Exchange Program. He says, quote, I call for the mobilization of the available intellectual competencies and political forces to defend the bona fide property rights of owners of private banks in Ghana. There's also prioritized economic recovery over cathedral, and the Great Consolidated Popular Party has called on President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo to make the recovery of the national economy a priority over the construction of the national cathedral. The leader of the party, Dr. Henry Herbert Latte, who made the call during an exclusive interview with the Daily Graphic, also implored the president to refrain from using any state resources or financial support from the IMF to support the construction of the national cathedral. Dr. Latte opined that resorting to the IMF to bail Ghana with $3 billion to address the challenges confronting the national economy was critical. Hence, the need for the president to refrain from using any amount of the loan to support the construction of the national cathedral. He's made a very valid point, and I support this point wholeheartedly. The only issue is, will the powers that be heed his call? Only time will tell, assuming we get the deal. On the back page, NDA CEO, 3 others granted 2 million Ghana cedi bail, and the Office of the Special Prosecutor has arraigned the CEO of the Northern Development Authority, Sumaila Abdul Rahman, his 2 deputies and a businessman before the Tamale High Court for allegedly bloating a contract sum from 5.72 million to 10.4 million. And so they've landed in some hot water there. If you followed that story, you would notice this development. And a lot of such, I followed the story up to the point of the OSP getting into the matter and the different dynamics and how they claimed they didn't even know how the figure of 10.4 million, which they had signed to, came to bear. There's too much corruption in Ghana. Far too much. And our leaders, government in, government out, it's all talk shop. And we fall for them, Ghana for. Let's open our eyes. These leaders, a lot of them, people will say, oh, but the MDA CEO and all of that is not. It's very reflective of our system from head to toe, from the very top to the very bottom. And some exposés in the past have even pointed to the very height of our leadership in this country. So what are we doing about it? And yet we are surprised, we act surprised that we find ourselves where we do when it comes to the Corruption Perception Index Last year, that drive by the Ghana Statistical Service revealed that moving away from perception, the reality is even more stark. So where do we go from here? And maybe, how much are we, you and I, how much are we contributing to that problem? That's something else we all ought to assess. The technocrats are even worse than some of these politicians. It is indeed a sad development. But I'll go back to Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante, who joins the conversation once more, just leaving you with Ghana School of Law inducts 700 students, and there was a call on them to uphold the ethical values of the school and let them guide their path in the legal profession. Usually, legal education in the country would get me talking, but this morning I think I'll just stay away from that for today. Doc, welcome back. You had two stories to reflect on: the bondholder revised offer and the rent support scheme. Quickly on that, please.
On the rent support scheme, I think it's a beautiful scheme, but that the authorities need to be able to figure out the real challenges that confront such projects, some of which you have alluded to already, so that they can look at them and then make sure that we don't start such a beautiful program and ends not successful. All right. Time again, we have seen such beautiful projects that at the end of the day, we throw in money and we don't get value for money. All these things must be fixed. And then tied to this is the issue of the law on rent. Advance payment where people charge more than what the law expects. All right, that you can take more than 6 months of rent advance, where people take 1 year, must be looked at so that it gives this project the foundation that it deserves.
Right.
There's no doubt that it's a beautiful project and it's part of the MPP manifesto promise, but we want to make sure that we get value for money. That's the way to go.
That's the way to go. Let's quickly get into the Ghanaian Times newspaper now. Domestic debt exchange program deadline extended to February 7. We've taken a look at that story. GRA arrests 3 over non-compliance to electronic VAT system. We'll be getting into that. Ifia, I always struggle with, because I would like to pronounce it the way the Germans would do, Schwarzenegger, fined 60,000 Ghana cedis for contempt of court. And there's also government launches 30 million Ghana cedi nationwide rental scheme to increase access to safe, secure, affordable rental scheme. Both of these stories we've done. But let's take a look at the GRA. Some arrests have been made in recent times, and looks like they're going hard on those not in compliance, which is a good thing. 3 persons have been arrested by a task force of the Ghana Revenue Authority for non-compliance to the electronic value-added tax system. They include 2 foreign nationals who are the managers of Palace Shopping Mall at Community 25 in Tema and Maxmart East Legon branch, and a Ghanaian who is a senior official at Second Cup Coffee Shop at Jolu in Accra. The officials, whose names were not disclosed, were arrested after disregarding an initial caution by the GRA on the issuance of EVAT invoices and other illegal practices to evade taxes. The 3 persons were sent to the headquarters of the GRA for their statements before they were handed over to the Criminal Investigation Department of the police. The initiative is part of an ongoing nationwide VAT invigilation exercise to ensure tax compliance and retrieve taxes due the state. There's also Israeli ambassador calls for promotion of worldwide peace. I'm talking about Shlomit Sufa. And she yesterday called on the local and international communities to work together to promote peaceful coexistence. It's timely she says this, especially on the back of recent developments between the Palestinians and the Israelis, and some bombings, so to speak. The latest I recall is a 13-year-old who allegedly, with some help, killed about some 7 Israelis, and the back and forth, in that region. Any quick thoughts on that? The GRA?
Yeah. If you look at the GRA story, I am in firm support of what the GRA is doing.
Right.
Because all the states are required to be able to generate the needed resources to run its own affairs. This is what we call in political science the extractive capacity of the state. And the state is gone. And we, all of us, must support the GRA to be able to make sure after we raise the revenue, we ensure value for money. But if people want to run away from their responsibility of paying taxes, that is a problem. That culture must continue to be, we must give education to that so that people know that it is their duty to pay taxes and ensure that government business runs and for the benefit of everybody. Once you shy away from this, then you are likely to undermine the business of government. And you, the very person who want to come around and then criticize government for non-performance. I think it's unfortunate. So I support the GRA. Everybody, every Tom, Dick, and Harry in this country who is legally employed and then who owes a duty to pay taxes must do so that we save our country a lot of borrowing, a lot of expenditure and all that. But we want to send a note to all our officials that money that they collect, let them apply them judiciously so that at the end of the day, it doesn't become something that affects people's psyche, that yes, when I pay the money, it will not be put into good use. I believe that authorities will ensure value for money.
Well, on the back page, we'll create opportunities for young girls through golf. And the president of the Captain One Golf Society, Mr. Pius Apia, has expressed the society's commitment to use golf to rid the streets. The Ghanaian Times says raid, but we all know better. To rid the streets of underprivileged kids and guide them to make a life out of the sport. Mr. Apia said this on Saturday after receiving a special award on behalf of the society at the 47th Sports Writers Association of Ghana Awards. And can Legon cities upset hearts? That's a story there, a question posed on the back page of the Ghanaian Times newspaper. Which local team do you support when it comes to football, Doc?
Unfortunately, now I have no preference. I used to be with Accra House of Coke. Okay. But what I went through, I don't want a repeat of that. I now firmly glued to my national team, the Black Stars. Rain or shine, I'm with them. But sometimes I go to sleep early when they are playing football. I think with the new coaches the new coach that we are trying to employ, all these things will be a thing of the past. And then when they play, everybody will be happy and then we'll get the needed results.
Let's get into the Daily Guide newspaper. Baumia launches rent assistance scheme after forcing fights government over old fridges ban. Ghanaian earns PhD in Arabic studies, story on page 6, and 3 CEOs granted 2 million Ghana cedi bail. I'm talking about the NDA. Let's look at those two stories, the PhD holder later, but the Atuforsen story first. A newly appointed minority leader, Dr. Cassiel Atuforsen, stoked the controversy yesterday after posting a tweet to denigrate and quote disaffection for the government over a public notice on the enactment of new laws to regulate the markets for electrical appliances and renewable energy products. The Energy Commission had issued the notice to inform the public about the passage of a total of 19 regulations by Parliament last year, which regulations provide for a transitional period of 1 year for the market to adjust to ensure smooth implementation. Now, the new minority leader, bumbling over with, okay, so again, I think today I'm marking the newspapers. The Ghanaian Times said to raid the streets instead of rid the streets. And now I am seeing the new minority leader bumbling over, more like bubbling over with excitement to please his appointing authority. We ought to watch the English. People read this and take it for fact. Bubbling over with excitement to please his appointing authority, jumped on social media platforms to politicize the announcement, claiming that the government had banned the importation of used electrical appliances such as TV sets, computers, fridges, among others. He wrote, quote, "This is insensitive," before attaching a list of 20 items contained in the schedule of regulations 1, 2, and 7, which include air conditioners, comfort fans, computers, distribution transformers, electric kettle, electric motor, incandescent lamp, industrial fan, and inverters. The rest are television sets, refrigerating appliances, microwave ovens, monitors, metal halide lamps, rice cookers, washing machines, water heaters, ventilating fans, solar panels, and set-top boxes. That's the first story there, and the Daily Guide couching it as his being political. But let me add the story on page 6 about the PhD holder, and then we can have your reflections. Doc, Adam Umar Yabela has made history by becoming the first Ghanaian to receive a PhD in the teaching of Arabic to non-native speakers from the famous Islamic University of Medina in Saudi Arabia. The Ghanaian scholar is very respectful, friendly, hardworking, and accommodating. He displays impressive academic prowess during his PhD studies in the university to the admiration of his professors and supervisors. I mean, it goes on, but we salute Adam Umar Yabela for this feat. As a student of languages myself, French, Spanish, Portuguese, English in itself, it's no mean feat at all. We salute him. Quick reactions?
I think I also will join you and others who are celebrating him, that he's done so well. His effort is worth commending here. And we believe that this will serve as a shining example for many who want to venture into that area and study all this beautiful and important language. Arabic is a very useful and beautiful language, very, very important in this world of ours, that we need people to go in there and study and then teach others. So it has a lot of economic benefit, political benefit, and the rest of them. So I am emboldened by this to encourage others who want to follow the same path, that it's an important program that we should not shy away from. Our students at Legon, I encourage them to take this subject seriously. It is the way to go. One of the languages is enough to help you to move on in life and move into better places. It is important. All right.
Thank you. The final newspaper, and we'll be wrapping in 2 minutes. DDEP offers improved terms to individuals and those retiring this year. We've already looked at that story. 4 accused of inflating contract. That's the NDA story. We've also looked at Ayariga and 30 million for phase 1 of rent scheme. All of these stories already looked at. Let's wrap then. The Ghanaian publisher, Otumfuo, advises NPP flag bearer contestants. We know recently Alan Trebanting was at the Manchia Palace to interact with Otumfuo. Forestry Commission, military turn attention on Etiwa, and recently we were told about some illegal mining activity going on there. Oh, Mother Ghana. When? Baumia hails rental assistance novelty. Obi Amwa defends court's role in democracy, and minority challenges ban on imported used electronic appliances. The new crusading guide, drama over NDA chop tango. And next, NDC government will tweak the constitution, John Mahama confirms. Finally, the custodian newspaper, Tampuli, I'm talking about Hassan Tampuli, cut sought for 3.6 million Ghana cedi Gushegu Hospital Maternity and Surgical Ward. And Ikuapem South gets new district court. I'd like you to reflect as you leave us on this bit. Next NDC government will tweak the constitution, as John Mahama is said to have suggested. That's the story in the new crusading guide. Any thoughts on that? And for you, what aspects of the constitution, off the top of your head, do you think we should be tweaking?
Yes, I think the call is right and very much appropriate because we have operated the Constitution for some time now. We have seen the benefits, the problems. One of the problems we have, I want to flag it up, is the issue of, it is something that I expect a bold politician to take it up, and then we'll place a cap on membership of the Supreme Court. Why am I saying that? There is always a problem where people criticize government that, yes, they keep on packing the courts and the rest of them. There are examples all over the world. If you look at a mighty America, it has only 9 judges who sit and all sit at a go. It takes away some of the problems that confront the judiciary as the bastion of the law, all right? So I think that going forward, if NDC is serious about tweaking the Constitution, it is one test that I want them to pass.
Right.
Place a cap so that it will save us a lot of resources, a lot of unnecessary criticisms that are leveled against the Supreme Court, and so that we'll have the apex courts very much at peace, and then they will be able to do their work as expected of them.
Doc, we're really grateful you took the time to join us this morning, and I still owe you a trip to see your fish farm.
Please come over. We'll enjoy.
Thank you so much, and have the best of the day. That is Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante, a lecturer of political science at the University of Ghana, also the head of the Center for European Studies. Before we wrap and get into sports, I would like to send shouts to Wallace Hudson in Tennessee in the United States. You've been in Ghana, you are back in the United States for a long time now. You always follow the AM show. We're grateful to you for that. Thanks so much for choosing us. Thank you for choosing me. And thanks for yesterday, for all your encouraging words and support. God richly bless you. That's to Wallace Hudson. The news review on the AM show is brought to you by Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, and they are offering free prostate screening and free female fertility screening. You can locate them in Accra at Spintex, opposite the Shell signboard, in Kumasi at Kronum Abuehia, behind Angel Educational Complex, in Takrade at Anaji Estates in Tema Community 2, in Techim and Hansua, and in Esiama and Zema. You can reach them on 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. Well, also a happy birthday to Mrs. Joyce Buama Bua in Teshi Manette Estates. God bless you and your family as you celebrate another milestone. It's from Isaac Kofi J here at Joy News. Also to Reverend Ignatius Kobina, General Overseer, City of Christ Church Worldwide, wishing you God's blessings and a fulfillment of your heart's desires. It's from Bernard Bludo and family. On that note, we settle for sports. Up next.
Giveaway Premier League clubs, the fastest player of the FIFA World Cup 2022 is in town. Kamaldeen Sulemana will be playing for Southampton in the next 4.5 years. And also in the Chan tournament, host nation Algeria and Senegal will vie for the ultimate crown on a Saturday in the grand finale of the competition after they won against Madagascar and Niger, respectively. Also, we're talking about some Ghana Premier League action that will be happening. There's midweek football here on AM Sports with me, Muftaw Nabila Abda. But let's start with the Chan tournament, where Ayam Mahios scored 2 goals as host Algeria hammered Niger 5-0 to reach the final of the Energies African Nations Championship. Mahios scored his 4th and 5th goals of the tournament in the first half to secure the emphatic victory for the ZS Warriors. Senegal missing a plethora of opportunities there, but still managed to see off the game, and they will be coming out against the host nation Algeria in the grand finale on Saturday. The game will be live on the Joy Prime channel. Let's come home and talk about Ghana Premier League. There will be midweek action in the competition. We take a look at the fixtures for March day 15 in the competition, and Kem Faisal will come out against Midiama FC. Accra House of Oak will sit at home and welcome Legon Cities, and Kotoko Royals who lost 5-1 to Kumasi Asante Kotoko on Sunday will play Bibiani Gold Stars, a team that also went to Tamale and defeated Tamale City 3-2. And so Atromana FC will come against Brekum Chelsea. Samatex will play Tamale City. Bechem United will come against Real Tamale United. Dreams FC will play the league leaders, Ediana Stars. And on Thursday, Accra Lions will play Great Olympics, and Karola United will also welcome Asante Kotoko. Now let's talk some athletics now. In August this year, the World Athletics Championships will be happening in Budapest, Hungary. Well, the Ghana Athletics Association, now known as Ghana Athletics, they say that they will need about $500,000 to be able to prepare their athletes for the competition. According to the Chief Executive Officer, Bawa Husseini, it is important that the government of the country comes to their aid to help them prepare for the event.
At the GFA, whether the GFA have resources to send them back to the World Cup, will be able to sponsor them without the state support. Whatever the state has to do to get this our athlete to the World Championship, it has to do. Because the financial muscle we need for Ghana to get a medal at the World Championship is way beyond the level of the federation or the association. We need to call a spade a spade. If you ask GFA, go and play the World Cup by their own, will they able to go? They cannot. It's the same level. It's the same level of that is our World Cup. But we are not demanding the same amount of money for that the government gives to GFA to give it to rest. No. Definitely, the football will need more resources than us. But we also need, we also have to have another more resources to be able to get to that level. So to the athletics level, what a station standard, we can get the competition for them, we can get our local program for them, but to actually prepare the national team adequately to go and win a medal or get to the final at the World Championship, we definitely will need the state support and not the support of 20,000 or 30,000. We need about $300,000 to $500,000 to be able to get a medal at the Olympic Games or at the World Championship. If we're able to prepare the team very well, to perform very well at the World Championship, some of them will qualify to the Olympic Games for this World Championship. That's the beauty of athletics. Like what happened to Deborah.
Yes.
She qualified to this championship from the last year
Commonwealth Games.
Yes. So if our 4x100 is able to go to the finals from this game, that automatically qualifies them to the next year Olympic Games.
Olympic Games in Paris.
Yes, in Paris. So that the preparation for Paris should start now. We can't wait for next year to start preparing for Paris. It will be certainly too late for us.
About 6 athletes have already qualified for the championship. And there's also a U.S. athlete who has switched nationality to compete for Ghana for the World Athletics Championship. We'll have details of that story on my joyonline.com. Let's go back and do some football stories where Newcastle United, they have reached their first cup final since 1999 by overcoming Southampton in the EFL Cup at ecstatic St. James's Park. And the host side will face either Manchester United or Nottingham Forest at Wembley as they attempt to win their first major trophy since 1969. On Tuesday 9th, the European transfer deadline day happened, and most of the major deals there were lots of media traction was in England, and it happened because many Ghanaian players were actually moving to the English Premier League. And Antoine Semenyo, he moved from Bristol City, a championship side, to FC Bournemouth. And Kamaldeen Sulemana, he moved from Rennes to Southampton for a transfer fee of about 25 million euros. These are stories of Ghanaian interest, so definitely it was always going to lead our conversation. But there were other deals that also happened in the English Premier League, as Chelsea's deal with Enzo Fernandez finally went through, and Jorginho also moving to Chelsea. And this is how Nathan Opoku, he moved from Field Masters to Leicester City. Emmanuel Tokyo moved from Botef to OH Leuven. That is a move. He was with Ghana for the Under-17 World Cup that took place in India in 2017. The team was kicked out of the competition at the round of 16 stage. And Kobna Owusu, he moved from Karabakh to Frank Veros, a former club of Joseph Painsil. Samuel Oben moved from Real Oviedo to SD Huesca, and this is in Spain. Afriye Aqua, a midfielder of the Black Stars, he moved from Albertine to Uwa Al Jawiwa. Wow. This is in the UAE. David Abagna Sandan, he moved from Real Tamale United to Al Hilal. He He was one of the top performers for the Black Galaxies at the Shan tournament. Afriye Bania moved from Accra House of Oak to FC Zurich. And Andre Ayew, report has suggested that he was likely to be moving back to West Ham United, but unfortunately, that deal could not be announced. We still wait to see if there was a window, or there will be a window for the deal to finally go through. But he left Al Sadd after he agreed with the club to terminate his contract with them. Chelsea's big January signings, we have Modric, he moved from Shakhtar Donetsk, and Badiashile, he moved from AS Monaco. Madueke moved from PSV Eindhoven. Gusto moved from Lyon. Santos from Vasco da Gama. Fofana from Molde. Joao Felix, he came on loan from Atletico Madrid. These are the big January signings for Chelsea. So as many as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 signings for Chelsea. And there's also Enzo Fernandez. That often takes it to 8, plus some many other players. So Chelsea, loads of signings they've done in the transfer window. And major January deals, we have Cristiano Ronaldo to Al Nassr. There was Cody Gakpo from PSV Eindhoven to Liverpool. Weghorst from Burnley to Manchester United on loan. Daley Blind, he moved to Bayern Munich. There were also reports of a move from Cancelo to Bayern Munich as well. Anthony Gordon, he moved from Everton to Newcastle United. Leandro Trossard from Brighton to Arsenal. Danny Ings, Aston Villa to West Ham United. Joao Cancelo, as I just mentioned a couple of minutes ago, is Manchester City to Bayern Munich. These are some of the deals that happened in the transfer window. Hakim Ziyech to PSG. This deal is yet to be officially announced because reports are that some documents were messed up, so unfortunately it couldn't go through. Jorginho moved from Chelsea to Arsenal. Chelsea empowering Arsenal to win the Premier League title. Many Chelsea fans are saying so. But maybe there's going to be a combination of Jorginho and Thomas Partey, as well as Xhaka and the other players who have stood out for Arsenal this season as they seek to win the Premier League title for the first time since 2004. And this is how we wrap up AM Sports here with me, Muftau Nabila Abdullah. The show continues right after this.
Close to 3 years since President Akufo-Addo promised the Agenda 111 hospitals, a number of the projects are yet to take off with the land for some bare and contractors not on site. A number of these contractors have all been paid more than $1 million but have failed to show up to work. Ranking member on the Health Committee, Kwabena Minta Kando, says this is because government and party officials have gone to take the money from the contractors.
These people have been given the money, and behind the scene, the NPP gurus themselves have gone to take the money. And so if you push the contractor, he cannot come to site because you yourself, you've taken the money from the contractor. And you cannot do anything to the contractor because you have taken the money. So where is the money to take to site? So you may not have the moral right to even put pressure on the contractor to go to site. Okay? And there are even people who are also on site, but if you look at the magnitude of work and you correspond it to the amount of money that has been given to them, I mean, it's not tallying.
He insists government must show commitment and do as it has promised.
Let me sound this warning, that it's not as though we are doing a 9-day wonder, that we have been here and then they will discuss the issues in the media and that is all. We'll come back. So we are calling on the powers that be that the contractors must report to site immediately.
In the Bue municipality of the Oti region, the promised facility is yet to take off, and the chief of the area is complaining about the politicization of the project.
Bibia omo di adani politics. Nanso enye bibia na say politics. Se bi ye wo mpenyinfo sebi kafra ya titi won fie nanso enne akoye se wo ma beye miensa na wayi beye mienu a ope wo mu asem eno na ye yen ja sikanfo problem ayewo yen bibia dani politics uko other places se mi mbodi a keje bi haya o hwe bibia omo aye omo adwuma aso yen de we a ehoti no saa neti adwuma nso omo ka se 1 year na nkomatimi adru baby nanso ase yen yama yenka Ghana for ho memiti o menye politics o na momu se me hu se o ya dipa na me ye de me bo abaso mesere mo sorry ha mo be ko ho na mo akohwe adwuma agenda 11 no mo akohwe ade a ewo eho
MP for the constituency, Kofi Adam, says his people are angry about the situation.
This can be $1.2 million advance payment after a year. Something seriously must be done, and my people are really angry. If you speak to the chiefs and the elders, they will tell you they are really, really, really angry, and they feel being let down. The promises are becoming too many.
The story on Agenda 111 is quite similar for all the sites we have visited so far. We've been to the Ashanti region, the Eastern region, and now here at Damfa, here in the Greater Accra region, the Medina constituency. This is the land earmarked for the Agenda 111 hospital for Damfa and its environs. So far, about $1.3 million has been paid to the contractor, including Micheleti, the contractors, 3 of them, including Micheleti, to mobilize and come to site. But no work has been done so far. Unlike even other sites where some excavations had been made, there is no such thing here. Indeed, you can still see some plantation, which presupposes that some farmers are still cultivating the land, contrary to government plan to use this for Agenda 111 and having advanced some form of money to the contractors close to a year ago. We understand payments of about $1.3 million were made in March of 2022. But no work has been done so far. And so all the sites we have visited so far with the minority on the health committee indicates that government needs to do a little bit more to supervise and monitor the Agenda 111 hospitals, which it seeks to help deal with healthcare in the country. With so many sites laying bare, with so many sites having no work being done on contractors not on site, government's timeline of 2024 will completely be a mirage. And also the idea that by 2027, much of it would have been completed will not come to pass. Reporting for Joy News, Kweku Asante, Damfa, Accra.
And that's my colleague Kweku Asante reporting there on Agenda 111. What's the status? How far have we come? What is left to do? And what is the reality of the promise that has been made by government? This morning we'll be talking about that. We'll also take a look at COVID-19 spending, the expenditure, and what we can expect from there. But the first issue we'll be tackling, and I just shared this with our guests briefly, will be the state of the National Democratic Congress in respect of what we've seen recently in Parliament. Joining us for that conversation, Kwabena Menta Akando, Member of Parliament for Dwa Bosso, Ranking Member on Parliament's Health Committee. I always, that place name, I always struggle with it. I don't know. Honorable, since you're here, can you give me the proper pronunciation?
It's Dwabosso.
Dwabosso.
Just relax and pronounce
it. So I was close, eh?
You were close, but you were struggling.
Dwabosso.
One of the most important districts and constituencies in this country. Very, very important.
What's the state of Dwabosso as of now? If you know, usually when you go to constituencies, you would see myriad problems from health to infrastructure to what is the state of your constituency?
Yeah.
What are some of the developments there that you can speak of very briefly on?
It's a rural constituency. So yes, we've done something about access to education, but there's still a long way to go. We did so much about rural electrification, but there are some places, about 15 to 20% of the communities without electricity.
There's issues about water, potable drinking water. So any problem you can associate with rural constituency or rural communities in this country, you can find some there. But the major occupation in the area is cocoa farming. But unfortunately, the cocoa industry is on its knees. I mean, it's gone.
How so?
If you go to my area, the production has dropped more than 60%. The production of cocoa, because this government.
Within what period? Because if you say it could be that you're talking about 2000 to
from if you check the data between 2017 downwards, it's always declining. All the time, it's declining and declining. So it's dropped over, in my area, for example, it's dropped over 60%. You know, there were some incentives that the former regime was giving to the farmers. For example, free fertilizer and what have you, access to chemicals to spray their farms. And there are a lot of diseases attacking the cocoa. They have come to cut the cocoa down for almost 2 to 3 years, and they are not coming to replant and all that. So there are series of challenges in the sector. So, yeah, and then the general hardship in the system.
But in terms of the fall, you mentioned that there were things that the previous administration was doing that are no longer being done. So what do you attribute this to? If you make it a blanket statement that from 2017, it's been tapering off, do you know why? Do you know what is causing
You know, we have a whole unit, Ghana Cocoa Board, which is responsible for everything cocoa. In fact, previously, Ghana Cocoa Board was under the Ministry of Finance. And under this regime, it was moved to Ministry of Agric. So there cannot be any system or any sector in this country without problems or challenges. So the problems and the challenges cannot be the excuse.
Right.
You understand? So that is why there is the need for you to look for the solutions. Because don't forget that the cocoa has been the backbone of the economy for a very long time. You remember those days when there's cocoa money in the system, irrespective of the fact that you are a farmer, you still enjoy cocoa money. It is not like that today. So as for the challenges, yes, some of them technical, but my point is that we have a whole unit. If the syndicated loan is coming, you remember the kind of pomp and pageantry it comes with, that, oh, the CD is going to gain strength and all that. But it all comes at the back of the production of cocoa. But unfortunately, the sector is cool. As I speak to you now, I know a single cocoa license buying company that the Cocoa Board owes more than 400 million Ghana cedis.
Just one?
Just one. And I'm saying that on authority. I know what I'm talking about. Just one company. What do you call it? Ghana Cocoa Board owes more than 400 million Ghana cedis.
Wait, they produce cocoa?
They buy, you know, their license, they buy. So when
Right.
they buy, Cocoa Board must pay them, because Cocoa Board is the marketing board for our cocoa. So no individual transports cocoa outside the country without going through Cocoa Board. You understand?
It's
So they
illegal
are
to do
owing,
so. Right.
exactly. So as I speak to you now, and take it from me, I share boundary with La Côte d'Ivoire in my constituency. Cocoa that we produce in Ghana, because of price differential, is going to La Côte d'Ivoire because our cocoa companies do not have the money to buy it. I'm telling you. Yes, that is what it is. That is a reality on the ground.
So
if you're not very careful, we'll discuss cocoa and through the agenda.
No. It's an important. I mean, cocoa is.
I know.
Agriculture.
And that's where I come from. Yeah, I am a cocoa farmer myself. I am a commercial rice farmer. So if you go into the agric sector, I know what I'm talking about. And you see, the painful aspect is that they are always quick to come and react to issues without tackling the realities on the ground. That's my pain. That's my pain. Now the cocoa farmers are living in poverty. I am telling you. Everybody is running away from cocoa to do other crops. People are running away, giving their lands to people to do galamsey and what have you.
A colleague of mine, Samuel Kojo-Brace, recently was in the Western region, Bordeaux to Asankragua and those places, and he reported similar cases, but for them, more importantly, the deplorable state of roads, which would also mean that carting cocoa products, and they are some of the biggest cocoa producing areas in the country, carting those to the central areas in Accra and all of that is problematic. And that's another thing I think we can do, open up, so that it doesn't necessarily have to come to Accra and all of that. We can deal with them. But having made that point, as Member of Parliament for this constituency, what have you done in this respect? Because you say you know people are smuggling our cocoa. What have you done? You're a Member of Parliament.
If a Member of Parliament, some, what do you call it, tools available at your disposal. Although I am the ranking on health, but I file more questions on the floor of the House in respect to agriculture more than even health. So you file a question. And the unfortunate aspect of filing a question is that when the minister brings the answer, it is not supposed to provoke debate. That's the unfortunate aspect of questions. So you file questions, they will come and answer. We take the press to the grounds all the time to see it for themselves. So at the end of the day, though you as a Member of Parliament, your responsibility is to raise the issues as I'm doing on your platform, but at the end of the day, because you're not the keeper of the public pets, you cannot have money to go and fix the issues or the challenges.
Right.
Unless, of course, issues that has to do with your common fund, the fund that is available to us. And of course, those ones, we've built a number of CHIPS compounds in the constituency. If you go to Adekrum, there's a CHIP compound there. Shemihan, there's a CHIP compound there. Kantamantu, we are building one. Kefas, we are building 3-unit classroom. Africa, there's a village on the border. Africa, I'm building one CHIP compound. These are funds available to the Member of Parliament. It's not a central government project. Right. Because my constituency, I've told you, my constituency is a rural constituency. These are emergency funds that people use to buy pens, books, computers and dash. But because I know the needs of my people, I have to use these funds for capital expenditure. So if you come to my constituency as I speak to you and they are listening, I have built a whole assembly hall complex in the secondary school with a Member of Parliament's Common Fund. Now we have a robotics center at Dwaboso. ICT center, robotics and ICT center in Dwaboso at the moment. Some NGOs came to assist me. We put up the structure, they brought the computers and what have you. So things that I am supposed to do, but you know that I have limitations when it comes to funding. And so the things that I have to do in my own small way, that one, why not? And we are always also projecting the constituency, raising the issues. But I know one day, I may get a bigger opportunity than I have today to fix those challenges.
Very quickly, your common fund, how much do you get?
Well, it depends. So, for example, we have the MP share of the National
And maybe you could add when the last time was that. Have you got the latest tranche?
No, it's always in arrears. So it depends. Sometimes it comes as, in a quarter for the common fund, it comes as, high as 60,000 per quarter. It depends, a formula. And then we have what we call the National Health Insurance, the MP share of the National Health Insurance Fund, sometimes 80,000 per a whole year. So if you're a Member of Parliament, and almost all the time, the final year, the 4th year, doesn't even come before you leave office. You understand? And then the GET Fund. So these are the projects, the monies you put together and try to do some of these projects for the people. Because you cannot, so you see, constituencies, issues are constituency specific. If somebody is in Bantama or Accra and he is buying computer for people, I cannot be in Dwaboso and be buying computers for people while the people are studying under tree.
I get the point you're making.
You understand?
So basically, you'll be making between 240 to 320,000 Ghana cedis in the common fund and using it on projects. Yeah. If you're using 60,000, that's 240. If you're using 80,000, that's about 320. And that's all you have available.
That's all. The sources I have, the sources I have mentioned is all we have as a
How big is your constituency in terms of population?
Well, the voter population, the entire population will be about 100,000.
100,000. Wow. Anyway, thanks for giving us that insight. Before we get into those two crucial issues of COVID-19 expenditure, and of course tied to that, Agenda 111, very quickly in some 2 minutes, when you look at the state of the NDC now, some people say your camp is in disarray. And
disarray?
Yes, disarray.
What does that mean?
Your leadership, you almost have a duplicate leadership. You have Dr. Kasiala Tuforsen and his team, Honorable Boa, among others. You also have Haruna Idrisu and others. There are split, factions here and there. Cletus Avoka came in initially, had to retract, apologize to Dr. Kasiala Tuforsen. There was a so-called petition. What is your reaction to all of that? And where do you find yourself in terms of what has come to the
What
fore.
is very important is that none of these issues is preventing any of us from doing our work. It hasn't prevented me from embarking on the inspection of the Agenda 111 site. It hasn't prevented Okujato from, unveiling all that he has.
Ghanaians say
it hasn't. So you see,
this tango is making you look bad.
Our caucus is never in disarray. We are clear in our mind what we are doing and what we want to do. These are changes that the leadership of the party is bringing. And of course, as human beings, you always respond, whether negative or positive, to changes. Okay? So these are internal matters. And of course, the members of Council of State have written, they've issued a press statement that we should hasten slowly on these matters. And for me, it is nothing to worry about. I think that will come out stronger. And this issue will be a thing of the past. As for changes, you yourself, even when you are relocating, you have challenges, don't you? So for me, it's a non-issue. The real issue...
You are in support of the relocation.
Are
you in support of the reshuffle?
Well, whether I am in support or I am not in support, this is not...
All of you seem to be skirting the issue. Are you in support of it or not?
But you see, the reality is that, let's face it, I have worked with the Haruna-led group. I've worked with them. I am very conversant with them. I love him. Haruna is a fantastic minority leader. All the leaders, Muntaka is a bold, courageous leader and all that. I've worked with them. And there's nobody in the new announcement that I don't know. Fantastic Atufosin, Kwame Abuja. He will always be on the first person to come to the floor of the House. These are gentlemen, we have worked with. Sometimes, even in the health sector, when there are issues of funds, the management of funds or financial issues, I run to Atufosin to explain those things to me to understand before I go to committee meetings. We consult each other. You understand? Look, Kwame Abuja is an architect. When it comes to infrastructure, all these Agenda 111 issues, sometimes I invite him to my office and he responds. So there is no issue. Absolutely no issue. But I think that, yes, if changes are coming, you obviously expect some kind of reactions, and take it from me, at the end of the day, whether the former or the current, we are going to come out strongly, very strong, and then deal with the issue, the real challenges. Now our debt is around 575 billion Ghana cedis. And as we are going to discuss, you have pumped not less than 21.8 billion Ghana cedis into the economy in the past 2 years. And after pumping 21 billion in an economy in the 2 years, we are where we are. And you are still blaming that thing that brought you 21.8 billion, that it is the cause of your financial difficulty.
You're talking of COVID-19.
Exactly.
Right.
Can you imagine?
We'll get into the details of that. So let's start the conversation with Agenda 111. And you've been out and about. You saw my colleague, Kweku Asante, also on the field in Damfa and other places, reporting from there. We all know that sometime in 2021, the President, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, launched the project. It was set to cover the design, procurement, construction, equipping and commissioning of 101 district hospitals, 6 regional hospitals in the newly created regions, as well as 1 regional hospital in the Western region, 2 psychiatric hospitals in Kumasi and Tamale, and a redeveloped Accra Psychiatric Hospital, which has had problems for a long time. What would you say is the status of Agenda 111 as we speak?
Akakpo, it's very, very sad, to say the least. We have an health infrastructure deficit in our country. And so the former regime made a frantic effort to put not less than 60,000 bed capacity to the already existing one. So that is why today we have the University of Ghana Medical Center. We have the Dodowa District Hospital. We have the Rage Hospital. We have the Tepa Hospital. We have the Sewia Hospital. We have the Kumawu Hospital. We have the Fomena Hospital, and all these hospitals. And I agree that the governance is continuing. But unfortunately, as I speak to you now, the projects that they inherited, this government inherited, 6-7 years down the lane, some of the projects were 60% complete, 80% complete. Akakpo, as I speak to you now, we haven't completed those projects. In any reasonable governance, in any serious jurisdiction, we'll be thinking about completing those projects before even moving forward. Because don't forget that we've gone for some loan facilities And we are paying interest on those facilities whilst those facilities are not being put to good use to start with. Now, so any attempt by any government to add on to the health infrastructure, I am totally for it.
Right.
Now, let me take you back a bit. In the year 2020, in one of the addresses of the President Nado, he promised the good people of this country that he was going to build 88 district hospitals, if you recall. 88.
That was that initial one before the
exactly.
One. Right.
88 district hospitals. And that he gave us a timeline that at the end of 2020, he was going to complete the 88 hospitals. Now, at the end of 2020, not a single one was completed.
But your own camp also made it clear that it was an impossibility. If I recall, some of the rhetoric that came from the minority.
So they were vindicated. Because if they say you cannot build 88 in 1 year, even you build 5. And let's say, okay, after all, you couldn't build 88, so you have built even 5. At the end of the day, the minority was vindicated. Because we know the kind of people leading us at the moment. Now, he then, after 2020 elections, increased the promise from 88 to 111. And that's how come we have Agenda 111. When we started, and don't forget, the 88 was announced somewhere in April 2020. Take note of that point. The 88 was announced somewhere in April 2020. Now, when the Agenda 111 was announced, the Agenda 111 was moved. You know, all the health infrastructure has always been managed by the Ministry of Health. So they moved the Agenda 111 from the Ministry of Health to the presidency, where I thought that the due diligence and the feasibility studies will be top-notch. Okay? So there are instances where media houses such as Joy FM or JoyNews have written to the ministry for information on Agenda 111, and they will write back to tell you that they have no information on Agenda 111 because the Agenda 111 is not in that ministry.
You mean you write to the health ministry? And the health ministry
will write to you that they have no information on Agenda 111 because it is not in that ministry. You can contact your colleagues.
Ministry then
so that is what I'm
overseeing.
Okay. So now there is no ministry overseeing Agenda 111. They have formed a whole bureaucratic system, a whole secretariat called Agenda 111 Secretariat. They are using land cruisers and what have you at the presidency, led by the chief of staff. Now I'm taking you back. When these Agenda 111 was announced after the secretariat and what have you, they have told you already that there's a unit in the ministry that is responsible for capital investments such as Agenda 111. Okay? Now, they have to go in for a company, a private company, to come and manage Agenda 111. Now, the private company they went for, the original name of the private company is Call One Limited. The object, Call One Limited.
Phone call.
Call One Limited.
Limited, right.
Now, the object of Call One Limited is trading in general goods, import and export of general goods. Did you hear the object? And this Call One Limited was incorporated on the 30th November 2015. Now, immediately the 88 hospital was announced, which was in April. In May, Call One metamorphosized to Hospital Infrastructure Group. They had to change their name and amend their object.
So within the space of a month.
A month, in fact, weeks.
It's changed from
Call One Limited, exactly.
Export of general goods to hospital.
So now the object changed from trading in general goods, import and export of general goods, to trading in general goods, import and export of general goods, project management, infrastructure development, construction, real estate development, and management. In a matter of
so days. Project management and all of that sprang
just up. So that they can have the opportunity to manage Agenda 111. There are questions.
But do we know whether, you say there are questions, and there are, but do you know whether this went through a competitive bidding process?
That's also another
Do you know whether
charade.
It was sole source? What happened?
That is also, you see, we struggle before we even get information with regards to Agenda 111. How David Ajayi, I've heard David Ajayi before, isn't it? He's also here, from Cathedral to Agenda 111. He's also there. And so
yes,
it's one of the
Agenda 111.
Agenda 111. So the procedure, the whole thing, okay, the insincerity and the opacity with regards to Agenda 111 is just legendary.
Just give me a fair, because we don't want to denigrate any personalities. Sir David Ajayi is in Agenda 111 as what?
As one of the architects to design the hospitals. Okay, and even as at the time he was given that project, there's a contention that he was not an architect in good standing in Ghana.
Okay, of course, every jurisdiction, you have to go through certain processes.
It is not as though he's not an architect. I mean, everybody knows that he has an international reputation and all that.
A lawyer, a doctor, every year you have to.
Fantastic. So there are issues. So even the procurement processes, because they never appeared before the committee. And I'm now going to tell you how we got all this information and all these documents. Now, we had filed a lot of questions that the minister responsible for finance, for health should come and answer. And they never appeared on the floor of the House. So when we're going to consider the 2023 budget, then I invited the chairman of the committee and the minister responsible for health, that if they want us, the minority group, to be part of considering the health aspect, the health ministry's aspect of the budget, then they must come and speak to Agenda 111, or else we're not going to be part of it. So they had to appear. So when they were coming, they were led by the chief director of the Jubilee House. Okay? Now, don't forget also that when the president cut short in the initial stages, they gave us a timeline that they were going to complete this project in a matter of 12 to 18 months. That was the first timeline that came. Now, during the State of the Nation address last year, the president then said that the timeline was too ambitious, and so he could only complete in 2025. And let me quote the president. The president said in the State of the Nation address, "We have every intention of seeing this project through to a successful end, which will enable me to commit," me here means the president, "which will enable me to commission all 111 hospitals before I leave office on 7th January 2025. This is the president speaking. This is what the president told the people of this country. Now, if a president speaks, it must carry weight. Won't do haircut, then the next day there's haircut. Won't go to IMF, then the next day you are begging.
I know Agenda 111 in a way is also tied to COVID-19, but if you look at the fact, and it will be pointed out to you by this administration, they've had to deal with COVID-19. They now have to deal with the Russo-Ukrainian war. That will impact our expenditure, that will impact our fortunes as a country, it will impact our GDP, it will impact our productivity levels. And I think that you are even aware that we've ended up at the doorstep of the IMF.
Let's pause here where we are. I'll continue from there about the timelines. But let me address what you have just raised. You should be one of the people who should never entertain COVID as one of the reasons why we are where we are.
I'm only bringing.
Yes, I know you are doing your work.
Yes,
I know you are doing your work. And these are some of the things they have been singing. I've pointed it out to you that if you are a president and in your economy, you see, to the extent that COVID was a disease and people died as a result of COVID, it's a disaster. I agree. With regards to our economy, COVID was a blessing. COVID was a blessing. And so you can't tell me that after pumping in 21, let me even go with the
21.5. It goes up to about 25 billion.
And then you come and tell me that there's financial difficulty as a result of that. They should better tell us where these financial difficulties are coming from. It cannot be COVID. It cannot be COVID. Because COVID gave us more money than any resources in this country per year. More money. How much does cocoa give us? Between 1 million to 1.3 billion a year. That's how much we get from cocoa. So they cannot be reasons. So that one we should stop saying. Let me continue with my argument. It cannot be entertained. And henceforth, with the figures, in fact, the vice president had a different figure, the president himself had a different figure, the minister responsible for finance had a different figure, and that the auditor general is also coming out with a different figure. But let's even...
That's just because the auditor general leaves out 3 key components. We're talking about the national components, Korea, Germany, and others.
Exactly. Why must he leave it out?
Which were not factored in.
Why must he leave? And these are the questions. We'll come there. So that cannot be the reason. And we should not entertain these things. You see, we are where we are as a result of one, incompetence and arrogance combined. That's where we are. Because you see, There could be people who are incompetent, but they will listen to people, other people's opinion, suggestions. We can get out of the situation. When President Mahama was advising this president that go to IMF, what didn't they tell him? They insulted him that he has no alternative and that they were not going to go to IMF. Now, we went to IMF in an ambulance. Now we are begging IMF that accept us. And we are where we are. So they cannot tell us that. And when you believe in your own lies and in your own incapability or in your own arrogance, that is where, because we have gone back more than 15, 20 years. Okay, now people have it was those days in the 80s where I heard that people will have commodities in their shops, and then because of prices, they will come and then auction those things for other people to get the opportunity to buy. But in a democratic dispensation, that you enter into an agreement with government, bonds, the government decides that I am not going to give you your money for how many years. So I will come there. But the point is that, remember that I told you, the president told us that I've quoted the president, that they were going to deliver these Agenda 111 before 2025. Now, this is their own document when they appeared before the committee. And this document is titled Ghana Priority Health Infrastructure Project, Agenda 111, Parliamentary Update. Listen to when the Secretariat told us that they were going to finish this project. Listen, and I'm quoting. An estimated amount of 300 million will be required to support this output, 300 million. And this output is what I'm going to tell you. This. We further project that at the rate of progress, about 20% of district hospitals will be fully completed in 2024. 20%. Now, they didn't end there. Completion forecast. Bullet 1. 20% of hospitals could be completed in 2024. Bullet point 2. 20% of hospitals could be completed in 2025. Bullet point 3. 30% of hospitals could be completed by 2027. The last bullet point on this one. 30% of hospitals could be completed after 2027. After, we don't even know the date. So the president lied. There's no other way to describe it than lies. It was a clear lie. This is from their own document. So initially, we said that, look, there was not going to be any 111 hospitals. What they have set out to do is to leave a lot of uncompleted sites. So they'll do excavation here. They will put blocks there. They will put sand here, as you have seen. So when you ask them, they'll say, oh, works are ongoing.
But really, to what end?
That is the point.
If you say that is the plan,
the
question
is
to what end?
That is the plan, because the president has said something and he must be seen to be doing something, not to be committed to it. Because you see,
no, this is a serious allegation you're making. Are you suggesting that this administration has thrown dust into the eyes of Ghanaians, claiming they're going to put up, even if they don't complete 111 facilities, claiming they're going to do this, when in fact they have absolutely no intention of doing that? Is that what you're purporting?
Yes, but do I,
as ranking member?
Yes, of course. But do I have to say anything? I've quoted copiously from their own document, telling you that, look, hey, we are not going to do 111 hospitals. They are saying so. And they are telling you that even the 20%, they need $300 million. We don't have that $300 million in our budget. And don't forget, these projects I have mentioned, the ones that President Mahama undertook, we had what we call dedicated sources of funding. VAMED, NMS, AFDB, and what have you. Where is the dedicated source of funding for Agenda 111? So they are pushing the burden to future governments. So I don't need to be a civil servant to tell you that, look, the people are embarking on leaving a lot of uncompleted sites. So there are sites which, some works are going on, but I'm telling you, take it from me, before elections, they'll be seeking to commission about 2 or 3 or 5 maximum. Then they'll come and tell you with pomp and pageantry that they'll come and, oh, Agenda 111, Agenda 111. Where in real terms, Massa, if you're a president in any your jurisdiction, common sense, why must you leave projects that are 70% complete, 80% complete, 7 years down the lane? You haven't completed that. If you go to Abetifi now, if we are going back to Abetifi to continue Abetifi Hospital, we have to demolish more than 70% of the structures there before we can continue. It's not causing financial loss to the state. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't.
even before we continue on this trajectory, and I would like to salute my senior colleague, Samson Lade Anyenene. He just drew my attention to an RTI request the multimedia group put forward sometime in 2022, February.
For the information agenda 111.
Yes.
Fantastic.
So a request for information about government's
Fantastic.
agenda 111 projects. And pursuant to the act, we were asking for copies of the policy or policies underpinning the project, detailed project proposals, including feasibility studies and funding sources secured, a list of all the districts where projects would be cited, a detailed plan of commencement and completion of each of the projects, and a detailed plan for staffing and operation of each of the hospitals. It was actually signed by the head of our research desk, Raymond Akwa. Now, in March, actually the 21st of March 2022, this was the response from the Ministry of Health. It says, this is about your letter dated February 11, 2022 on the subject, request for information about government's Agenda 111 projects. Per our records, we do not have the information in our custody. Thank you. Signed, Kwabena Bwedu Oku Afari, Chief Director for the Minister. It corroborates what you have just
I will never set out to
shared
lie.
with
I have
me.
my integrity on the line. I have since I started politics more than 22 years ago when I was about 20 years. I have never come out with anything that later turns out to be false. If anybody has spoken on Agenda 111 and covered more than anybody, it's me. I won't lie. You understand? We think before we talk. We consult. We go into details. I have waited till today because I have their own records. I have their own documents. That's why I have waited till today. Because when we were pushing them, we knew what was on the ground. But I didn't want to go to do anything and they'll come and then rebut it and say, this is not what we are doing. I needed their own documents. Okay? So we won't lie. Now, fast forward. What is hurting at the moment is that monies have been paid to contractors over 1 year. And the progress is as you saw on the screen.
I was just looking at the story to do with the one in Adesso,
okay,
where I think it's $1.3 million or so that was paid to this contractor, and work is still yet to commence. We can get some more details, but you go around the country and some of these projects have been given out. Construction is yet to begin. Money has been doled out.
A year. If you say money has been doled out, you see, I don't have a problem about any project or any site that mobilization has not been paid and they are not on site. I don't have any problem about that. But to give $1.3 million US dollars, to give $1.4 million US dollars, to give $1.2 million US dollars to contractors over a year, Akakpo, if I give you $1 million a year, do you know what you will do with it? I mean, if you invest that money, and why wouldn't our economy be run aground if this is the way we behave? We've given money to contractors and they are nowhere to be found. We went to Kwabenakwa in the Obuasi East municipality or so. We went to Akrofom. That place they had done some excavation. We went to Adesso. In Medina, we were hunting for the site in Medina. Why? If they had not been giving mobilization, I don't have a problem. So why do you give our money to people and they are not on site? Look, when we set out to investigate how much has been pumped into Agenda 111, I can't listen to it carefully. In the 2021 media review budget, about 600 million Ghana cedis was given to utilize Agenda 111. If you go to the 2022 budget,
and for those watching, just to interject, that was the response by the Ministry of Health to the petition that we actually put forth, which is actually below. So the points I raised, we had sent that, put forward an RTI request, and this was a response that we got from the Health Ministry, which corroborates what you said when you also filed a similar request.
Yes, and so meanwhile, they are supposed to have a unit called Capital Investment Unit that is supposed to manage projects such as that. So let me continue on the sources of funding so far. I've already made a point.
So wrap up on that. Let's find a way of concluding on Agenda 111 so that we can also talk about COVID-19 expenditure.
No problem. I will do. So we have pumped not less than 1.8 billion Ghana cedis into Agenda 111.
1.8 billion Ghana
billion.
cedis. Right.
So let's ask ourselves, why are we punishing ourselves like that? If 1.8 billion could even build 5, why can't we build 5 complete and people can use those facilities than what we are seeing at the moment? Why? It is different from when projects have dedicated sources of funding. That one, you know, oh, this is a funds for it. Even if government leaves power, you are sure that the project will continue. But that is not the case for Agenda 111. So for me, I think that they have set out, and there are people of contention that, look, some monies have even exchanged hands. They've taken the money behind the scene, and the contractors don't even have money to go back to site and all that. So I am saying...
Are you suggesting there are some kickbacks going on?
In fact...
Which in fact could also be impeding the contractors from actually doing what they're supposed to do?
No, let me tell you, I'll disclose it here. Before I started and pushing for this, the information I gathered was that people had taken money, they've gone back, they've shared it, they have no money to go back to the site, and therefore they've left site or they've abandoned site. So I had to go and see for myself. So if you think there's money, go back to site. Go back. And
which people are we talking about?
Oh, people in the people in Agenda 111 should come and explain. Because look, they're supposed to.
But that is a blanket statement you're making. Which people?
What is wrong with blanket? When indeed,
you ought to be more specific.
when indeed you are the one monitoring, you have a whole secretariat and you have given people money for more than 1 year, and you're not. If indeed you have not gone back to take the money, why can't you tell the person to come?
So you're
to
blaming the secretary.
Of course,
you are blaming
from the president, because the president said this was a flagship program, so they shouldn't send it to the ministry. They should bring it to the presidency, where everybody was expecting that at least they would have done due diligence. Okay, this is what we are seeing. Look, there will be, because of what we are doing, some of them will never leave site too. So when you go to site, you see 2 or 3 people on every site pretending to be doing something, so that a candidate will not come there with a pressman and go and say we have abandoned site. But look, we'll hold their feet to the fire, because they have destroyed this country. Akakpo. We don't deserve this as a country. We don't. And so as for Agenda 111, we are not done yet. We will visit everywhere we need to visit. We will visit everywhere we need to visit to be able to bring out the challenges, the development, and what have you. That is our responsibility.
Okay. So as far as Agenda 111 is concerned, do you feel it's not going to see the light of day? But at the same time, so obviously the 20% in 2024 or 2025 is not a feasibility for you.
For now, they need about 3.9 billion Ghana cedis to be able to achieve the 20%. I have not seen that money anywhere in the budget. Where are they going to get the money? Given these critical conditions we find ourselves. You see, because of what some of us are saying and what some of us are doing, they will struggle to put up some. They will try in order to prove us wrong. They will do. I know them. When we started talking about one district, one factory, then they went around, commissioned other private companies to show us that the one district, one factory is ongoing. When we started talking about one village, one dam, they started showing us some dugouts, which today they are nowhere to be found. So they will do something, 1 or 2. But I can tell you that, on authority, that there wouldn't be any 111 hospitals before 2025. That I can tell you. That I can tell you. And as a president, when you speak, it must carry weight.
Let's reserve the rest of the time, and we'll see whether my director can project some of the COVID-19 vaccine procurement, the data we have now from both the Auditor General's report and the Finance Ministry. But looking at some of those details, in millions of American dollars, you look at how much we paid to UNICEF and Avast, over $120 million. We only got the value of about 38.32, with over 81 million outstanding. Then you look at the figures, and you were pointing to that, the Auditor General versus the Finance Ministry. The Finance Ministry says in billions of cedis, we got 18.19 billion. The Auditor General says 19.11, and even he leaves out key areas, the contributions of Korea, Germany, and the government of Ghana. So quite a number of dynamics there. And then there is also the procurement of ambulances, COVID related. And we paid $600,000 plus out of some $4 million. The specifications did not come through as expected, and those ambulances have not seen the light of day. You can also talk about those facilities which were supposed to serve as, what's the name of those again? The centers where if you got COVID, you would be isolation centers.
Yeah, disease control centers, yeah.
Which also, we are told, some of them are just lying fallow, a lot of money expended. What is the true state of our fight when it comes to COVID-19 and the facilities?
To start with, on the 7th of February 2023, we are going to begin a public hearing on the COVID expenditure, and we are expecting the minister responsible for finance to appear before the committee. So Honorable Atufosin has made a clear announcement to that effect, and so we are going to start our public hearing on that. Akakpo, remember that the Auditor General didn't set out himself to embark on auditing the COVID expenditure. We in the minority, if you Google Akando on COVID expenditure, you'll get more than 20 stories on that. We realized that they were sharing the COVID funds like roasted granules. Because there's no point that after investing 21 billion in the economy, we should be at where we are. Now, we filed a motion for probe into the entire expenditure of COVID-19. At that time, we had the first deputy speaker sitting in the chair as speaker. He threw our motion away. In fact, under bizarre circumstances because per our standing orders, if a motion is moved, debated, the speaker has no right to rule on the motion than to vote on the matter. But under this circumstance, the motion was moved, debated, and yet the speaker ruled and threw away the motion. I didn't know then, as at that time, that parliamentary candidates of MPP were giving money from the COVID money. I didn't know at the time.
Which era are you referring to?
I'm referring to the 2020 elections.
I see.
Only for a parliamentary candidate somewhere in the north to come and tell us that parliamentary candidates were giving some part of the money from COVID. So I then understood.
All parliamentary candidates?
Well, it says parliamentary candidate, whether all or some. I'm just quoting here.
So which
parliamentary
member of parliament on the MPP side said this?
He's not a member of parliament, he was a candidate.
A candidate.
A parliamentary candidate.
Right.
That lady, Sanerigu constituency.
I see.
I mean, it's a public knowledge. The video and the audios have been trending.
I mean, the specific bit about saying that COVID-19 money had been given to members of parliament. That is
candidate. He says her share as the parliamentary candidate.
Right.
She mentioned that in the audio. And then she continued to say that the share of the constituency executives, the share of the regional executives, they were all in the audio. If you have it, you can play it.
So it can trickle, it had trickled
I mean,
down.
why? Parliamentary candidates.
I mean, I'm looking at, some other angles. Unapproved risk allowance, for example.
No, I'm coming there. I've not come to the Auditor General's report yet. I'm coming. I think we have some time, right? We have some time. We
have about 5 minutes.
Oh, is that so?
Yes.
Okay, then I have to rearrange my destiny. So fast forward, the Auditor General has done some work on this COVID expenditure.
So I'm told we have about 10 minutes. So you can make the most of it.
You are moving me here and there.
Don't worry.
That's okay.
But at least that gives you more time to expand on.
So the Auditor General has done some work on the expenditure, but that is just a tip of the iceberg. Because you remember that the country director for the World Bank last year said that Ghana had benefited about $903 million, if you recall. If you check the sources of funding that the Auditor General, the first table 1, you realize that he has audited 430 million. So where is the difference? Now, as you mentioned, we had Germany bringing us about 40 million euro. We have South Korea bringing us 30 million, 60 million. In fact, there was a grant component in that. You understand? This can be found in the...
So if I may just give the breakdown, which is one of our slides, IMF 5.85 billion, World Bank, and all of these are in CDs. World Bank 2.58 billion, European Union 504 million, African Development Bank 405.65 million, Korea 349 million, Germany 280.99 million, the Bank of Ghana 10 billion, it's on your screen now, the Government of Ghana 4.51 billion, and the Government of Ghana Contingency Fund 1.2 billion. In total, you're looking at 25.68 billion Ghana cedis. And the source is what you see there, the 2021 mid-year budget review.
Fantastic. So if at the end of the day, the Auditor General comes to tell us that he has audited 21.8 billion, the difference, we should be looking for the difference, isn't it? Now let me draw your attention to something I found interesting.
So the difference is about 4.6 billion.
So we'll look for it. We'll look for it. Now, if you go to the Auditor General's report, Table 1, total amount mobilized, the Auditor General will tell you that they used about, there's a 2020 budget support. So IMF, about 5.5 something billion in Ghana cedis. Then AFDB, about 398. So when you add the bit that went into budget support, you have about 16.5 billion. I'm taking the Auditor General's own report.
Right.
Okay. Then when you come to page 31 of the Auditor General's report, he says that out of the 21.8 billion mobilized, about 11.7 was spent on COVID activities. Meanwhile, they had used 16.5 to support budget. So if you take the 16,
we know some of it went into LEAP, some of it went into budgetary support.
Yes, I'm not disputing that fact.
So much
they will go into the details. They will come and tell us the correlation between the fight against COVID and recapitalization of a bank. They'll come and tell us at the committee. They'll come and tell us if you use COVID money for fumigation, how fumigation will fight COVID. Those ones will come there. These are the details. They will come and tell us. Okay? We have not come to that end. I'm just using the Auditor General's own report. The Auditor General says that he has audited 21.8 billion. But the Auditor General goes ahead to tell us that out of it, they use about 11.7 billion for COVID activities. And I am saying that if you have used 16.5 billion for budget support, if you take this 16.5 out of the 21, you are not left with 11. So there's inconsistency.
Right.
That's the point I'm making in his own report. So that's why I'm telling you, probably at the committee, the Auditor General must come and speak to his own report. To probably, there are some kind of reasons.
Are you suggesting here that you're looking forward to inviting the Auditor General?
If it becomes necessary, because I'm a member of the committee. Yes, if it is very necessary, we'll invite him to come and speak to his own report.
When you look at on the face of
yes.
what you're seeing, do you think the Auditor General should be appearing before the Health
On the face, for me, I'm not the only member on the committee.
But you personally?
For me, personally, I think that he must come and speak to it.
The Auditor General?
Yes, he must come and speak to his own. So there are a lot of questions. For example, in this country, every constituency has an ambulance, isn't it? True or false? Tell me.
It's true.
Very good. So if there's an emergency and we are using the money to fight the emergency, why must we use money on something that we already have?
But we know that in terms of each such constituency having one ambulance, official ambulance, it does not suffice, does it?
But was that, a need at the time?
No, it does not suffice.
No, but you see, this is an emergency situation we are fighting. Okay? So we don't lack ambulances. We don't lack ambulances. Then you go and pay money. Ambulances that were supposed to be delivered in January 2022. And as I speak to you now, not a single tie of an ambulance has arrived in this country. You were talking about the $120 million vaccines. What the Auditor General didn't add was that, as at the time they were paying that money, We had an excess. You see, other countries had come to donate.
The health minister made mention.
Fantastic.
And he's also made mention of the fact that we don't even have the storage capacity to keep all of these vaccines in the country. And especially when we've been getting contributions, donations from other countries.
And so that is why you must tread cautiously. You must think. If your answer is very important. Home sense, very important. If you know we don't have the storage facility and we have more than 5 million doses, which of course some even went, some expired, why must you go and pay money for more?
I mean, even currently we're having a COVID-19 vaccination drive, aren't we?
So, and all we are talking about was not in 2022, and it's not in 2023. It's 2020 and 2021. So what steps did they put in place to retrieve these monies for us? Do you recall? And sometimes it's difficult when we have such conversations with you, the media. You don't go back to play my voice, play my videos, read online. When they used 32 million Ghana cedis on meetings in 2021, COVID money, companies can't cut better. In fact, we all know that in 2021, COVID has subsided, isn't it? 2021. Meanwhile, they told us, they looked into our eyes in Parliament and told us that in 2021, they used more than 600 million Ghana cedis on PPEs.
So let's do this as we wrap the conversation. What do you want to see done differently? What, as a Health Committee of Parliament, you're a ranking member on that committee, what are you going to push for when Parliament is back in session for the change that you want to see?
So first and foremost, we are going to start a public hearing. If at the end of the day somebody is found culpable, we must retrieve our money first.
Public hearing, but
public hearing.
The PAC usually
No.
does.
The Finance and the Health Committee, joint committee. The Finance Minister will be the first person to appear. When we finish, if some money is lost, anybody responsible must cough up that money, in my humble opinion.
So you're going to call for accountability?
Yes, clear.
How about transparency? Further transparency
of course,
in
yes.
spending?
So if somebody must be punished, somebody must be punished. And out of that, we'll come out with recommendations. I cannot sit here and tell you all. And mind you, you've not started that is why I keep raising questions. I'm being very careful and treading cautiously. You understand? And so we are not going to leave any stone unturned. I kept telling them they can do anything in any other sector. As far as I am not responsible, but in the health sector, no way. We'll continue to expose them. Let us all do the right thing, and we'll all go along. I mean, there are genuine issues that have come to the committee, and they get our support. There was a time they came back to us that they are finding it difficult sensitizing the people to take the COVID vaccine. MPP NDs on the committee, we came together, we shared ourselves onto the regions, and we went to sensitize the people to go and take the COVID vaccines. You understand? But the way and manner these people are spending our monies and behaving as if there's no tomorrow. The country is gone. Oh. The country is gone. We've gone back. The country is gone. As I speak to you now, 2023 is going to be harder than 2022. In fact, 2 times harder. Take it from me. I said this last year and they were insulting me. Because I sit in Parliament. I know the document, the budget you have brought. Now our debt to GDP ratio. So we are going to face, going forward, we are going to face more difficult economic challenges. So I don't know. I just don't know why people are behaving this way. Mother Ghana, what have we done? Is it a crime to entrust power into your hands? Is it a crime? And when you are even talking about one thing, they'll be doing, I mean, that is even when they'll be doing more. Huh? Why do you need $300 million to complete hospitals and you don't have yet? You are pumping about $400 million to cathedral. Who does that? Who? Tell me, who does that? I mean, Akakpo, the country is for all of us. And some of you must be talking. It's not a matter of I'm a neutral person or I'm a journalist or I'm in the clergy, so I'm not talking. Now the bonds. It's not only NDC members who have their monies in the bonds. The so-called neutrals are there. President Mahama said it. If you are taking a decision in the country and they say you are neutral and you sit on the fence, at the end of the day, the effects will come after you. The consequences, you bear it. We all go into the market to go and buy the one bunch of plantain, 5 cedis, as the minister said. We all go into that market and buy it. When you have an agric minister whose solution for food security is to sell plantains in the ministry, then clearly you should know that these people are run out of ideas. They have totally run out of ideas. And yet the arrogance with which they display, I mean,
and I suppose that's why some of you are there to hold the authorities.
Yeah, we are doing our best.
Each arm of government is supposed to be a check on the other. And as Parliament, you hold the public purse, you pull the purse strings, and we're counting on all of you members of Parliament from both sides, the NDC and the MPP, to do justice to the ordinary people of Ghana. But we're grateful that you took the time to join us this morning.
It's a privilege to be
to open up those chapters and, if you like, verses of what is happening with Agenda 111 and COVID-19 spending. That was Kwabena Menta Akando, a Member of Parliament for Joab Boso and ranking member on Parliament's Health Committee. Now, it's been quite a conversation, but stay with us because there's a lot more coming your way. We're talking corruption now, and Ghana, for the 3rd consecutive year, has scored 43 out of a possible 100 points, which would have shown our growth in terms of dealing with corruption. The CPI, the Corruption Perception Index, is our next issue on the chopping block as our big story. Do stay, we'll be right back. We're grateful you stayed with us. It's now a focus on the Corruption Perception Index, ALA, the Ghana Integrity Initiative, an arm of Transparency International. And when you look at our latest performance, 43 points, this means Ghana has actually ranked 72 out of 180 countries and territories. This score also reflects a lack of progress in the country's fight against corruption. Well, helping us discuss that all-important subject, especially knowing how much goes into graft every year. Vitus Azim is an anti-graft campaigner. We'll have others joining the conversation as well, but we'll start with Mr. Azim. A very good morning to you, sir. Hello, Mr. Azim.
Good morning.
Good to have you on board. Even before we get into the report proper, I'd like to find out from you, when you look at the graft, the fight against the graft and how far we've come, let's limit it to this administration, especially as we've seen the trajectory. What do you make of it? What inroads have we made and what is yet to be done?
I don't think we are fighting corruption or we're making any fight against corruption. And I don't think that we've made any inroads in the fight against corruption.
Nothing at all?
Inroads into corruption itself. I'm saying this because when you look at the various audit reports that have been issued by the Auditor General over the years, but more recently, the COVID-19 audit report. When you look at the media reports about allegations of corruption, and you compare that against what our leaders say about the fight against corruption, they don't match. It's just words and words without any action to back those words. And when you are fighting, you are prepared, you are armed to go to war. You are armed to deal with people, whether they are your relatives, your family, your party members, or whatever. But we don't see that at all happening in Ghana with regards to the fight against corruption.
And so for you, it's a lot of rhetoric and practically no action, right?
Yes. That's from my view.
We have the Office of the Special Prosecutor that has been set up specifically to deal with some of these issues. In your opinion, has this aided in the fight against corruption? Mr. Azim, that was for you.
Yes, he said in my, I didn't get it towards the end.
I was saying that within this administration, this tenure, we've seen the establishment of the Office of the Special Prosecutor. We had the first one, now we have a second one. Would you say that in fighting corruption, that office has produced nothing, especially as you say that generally, I mean, you don't see any fight against corruption?
I wouldn't say that it has produced nothing, but it has not met the expectations of most of us. You see, when you are looking at the fight against corruption and the institutions that are set up to fight corruption, you need to look at how many investigations have been carried out, how many successful prosecutions have been carried out, how much money has recovered from acts of corruption. And when you want to sit down and write a list for the Office of Special Prosecutor, I wouldn't say up to 5 over the last, since its inception. Or let's just say you will see up to 10 in 5 years. And so when you look at it that way, you wonder whether the cost of setting up the office is worth it. Because it is like just another of the various institutions that we set up, just probably to meet donor pressures or to meet citizens' expected demands, or just to claim political capital. But we don't resource them to do their work. And that is not different from what is happening to the Office of Special Prosecutor.
Thanks for those initial comments. Let me bring in Professor Bafo Agyemangua, CEO of the John Ejikun Kufuor Foundation. Prof, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining the conversation.
Pleasure.
When you look at corruption in Ghana today, what do you see?
Well, what do I see? What I see is what I saw in the 90s when I started working in civil society. 98 when the CDD was co-founded. We've been talking about corruption since then. I will continue to talk about it. So if you ask me, what do I see? All I can say is that nothing new, nothing at all new. You see, lately there have been all kinds of issues from the Auditor General's report. And lately we have the report of the Ghana National Integrity, the Integrity Report. Of course, every other year we get reports from Afrobarometer, and all these expose the extent of corruption in our society. You see, there are 3 key things here to really succeed in fighting corruption, if I'm not jumping the issue now. Laws. And if you ask me, do we have the laws? Yes. Since President Kufuor's time, when the Public Finance Management Act was passed, and all kinds of laws were passed. Then we talk about institutions. In those years, we were all keen on building institutions. The institutions are weak, so we need to create and build. We created and built. My good friend Vitus just said that we create institutions and we don't put resources behind it. He is right, but that's not even the issue. Because what you have been missing in all these discussions over the years is the human factor, which is the third and most important aspect of fighting corruption, the human factor. When I talk of the human factor, I'm basically referring to what we all know and call the character of individuals, the character of people we appoint and we elect to lead us as a country. Nobody ever bothers to examine the character of individuals we put in place. Those who appoint people are keen to appoint those who supported their campaign to win power. So we don't look at whether people are qualified, whether they have background that will not recommend them for certain positions. We don't do that. And adding to that, the human factor is something also that we don't discuss. Morality. I can tell you, as a country, we have what you may call we have forgotten to what you may call moral bankruptcy. Moral bankruptcy. Look,
You're saying we've got to the point as a country of moral bankruptcy. That's where we find ourselves.
We have become bankrupt morally. We are bankrupt. Because, my good friend, if you look at all the incidents of corruption over the years, and then look at the attitude of Ghanaians towards the issue of corruption, you look at how, whether or not, I should say, whether or not you are even able to enforce the law, because when you have the laws and you have the institutions, what will make those two things work will be the ability to enforce the laws and the ability of human beings who are operating these institutions to do what is expected of them. And we are lacking in both. And then part of the human factor is the kind of values that we cherish. What values do we cherish? And I was talking to somebody recently and we're trying to figure out, I don't know. It seems to me that as a people, we cherish money, wealth, and fame. And we don't care how people make money. If we did, there are so many people in this country who enter politics in a matter of a year or so, they build mansions. People know it. Nobody talks about it. We don't question how people make their money. We only glorify those who have the money. It's part of the moral bankruptcy thing I'm talking about. And don't bring in the churches. They are leading in this part. Just the other day, I read that there's someone who wanted to be president of Ghana. He said he runs a church. And now he's saying, well, I've divorced my wife, and now my church, the Bible permits me to marry my church members who are married for. And this is a person who most likely will come back next time to say, I want to be president. And he will have followers.
And that's an interesting allusion. Of course, we are not going to mention this person's name, though we all know the person. But then it means when you speak about moral bankruptcy, and then you tie that into, well, from the moral fabric of our society and the very people we are putting into office, it means there's a disconnect. But even before we get into that, you made a telling statement that I just wanted you to land on, and I would get back to you. You say since the 90s till now, the picture of corruption has not changed. It's interesting because back to back for the last 3 years or so, we keep getting the same score, landing in the same zone, and it would appear the fight against corruption. In fact, corruption may be fighting us, like Martin Amidu suggested. Is that the picture you're painting, that we've actually made no progress when it comes to fighting corruption?
If you want to find where progress has been made, you can cite the laws we have passed over the decades, the 3 decades of the Fourth Republic. Then we can also cite the institutions that we have created, including most recently the Special Prosecutor's Office. Of course, SHRAJ has been created by the Constitution. The Attorney General's Office is there. PNI, State Intelligence, all the institutions are there. Sure, we have made progress. But in terms of impact, what do you have to show? How many? Look, when Mr. Mahama was president, the opposition then raised hell over corruption. And the impression was that if that opposition party came to power, some people will go to jail. That was the impression we got. As I sit here 6 years into this government's administration, how many successful prosecutions have been had, how many convictions. In other words, and I think my good friend Azim mentioned that, we can't count none. Even though somebody who publicly sat on radio to say, look, I took the money and I used it, admitting that somebody is not even prosecuted successfully. So how can you say we are making progress? We can't prosecute corruption. We can't put our own friends in jail. We can't do nothing. So impunity prevails across board. Look,
are you suggesting then that the political forces have conspired to create what we see?
Theoretically, I can go along with that because it seems to me politically, these two dominant parties are playing some games with citizens. You know, they when they want power, they will label all kinds of allegations, true or false, on their opponent. When they have the opportunity to prove that these were in fact corruption. Look, you remember some years back, somebody said that President Kufuor packed bars of gold on a plane and shipped outside the country. Were you around at the time?
I heard those stories.
Yeah, these are no stories, because when that person was brought before Parliament for his vetting, he was asked, he said, oh, that was just politics.
Yeah.
So at times, when you hear corruption allegations and accusations by politicians in opposition, I listen with triple ears, because the past does not recommend that anybody is truthful. People are not truthful in fighting for power. By the way, I'm not excusing anybody of not being. That's not my point. But I'm looking at the behavior of our political leaders over time. And if you ask me, has anything changed? That's why I say, look, we may have had new laws and created new institutions, but the moral side, the human factor side is zero. I don't see any improvement there. So if you ask, are these political parties scratching my back and I come and scratch your back? Maybe, because they are those who put claims. They make claims that either Mahama was corrupt, or Kufuor is corrupt, Kufuor was corrupt. They are those who made a claim. I don't. And if you make a claim and you have opportunity to prosecute the person that was corrupt according to you, and you are not able to do it, then are you not deceiving the country and yourself? This is the issue.
It's interesting you make that point, and I'll be going to Mr. Azim now, but it's interesting Professor Agyemangua makes that point. I was just sitting here a short while ago with Dwaboso MP, Kwabena Mintah-Kando, who made a similar allegation in respect of Agenda 111 and the Secretariat and stuff. But he at least says he's going to pursue it in Parliament as ranking member. But for you, Vitus, before we get into the substance of the latest ranking, when you look at these latest developments, when you listen to what Professor Agyemangua says, that the moral fabric of our country has been compromised, so to speak, and that from the 90s till now, we've basically just pendulated. We are just hovering around the same place, not doing much when it comes to corruption. You say you see zero, but when you listen to what he has to say, does that give you even more emphasis on that point you made?
That we are saying about the same thing. When GI started releasing reports on the CPI, I think that was 1999 or so, it was 3.3. It rose up to 3.9 somewhere and went back to 3.9 in 2006. It just keeps fluctuating. But we've never scored 50 out of a clean score of 100. And when you write an exam and you don't get 45, or let's say 50, you should not feel comfortable. And then you also need to compare yourself to other candidates in the class. And that's where the ranking comes in. If out of about almost 200 countries, 183 or 184 countries, you are standing at 72. Are you comfortable with that? Especially when you also consider that those countries that have scored very low are conflict-ridden countries like Somalia, South Sudan, Syria. Do you want to compare yourself to those countries? In any case, Ghana is the first country south of the Sahara to have gained independence. And we boast of being a stable country. Shouldn't we be progressing in the fight against corruption? Shouldn't we be getting higher and higher scores on the CPI from year to year? If we are not doing that, is it not okay to say that you are not seeing any change? The allegations that were made under Nkrumah, the allegations that were made under Buzia, under Liman, even under the revolutionary regimes, are the same allegations that we are seeing today. Of course, the revolution came and shot people and all that kind of thing. But those people that were engaged in the revolution, who metamorphosed into a civilian regime, are they completely clean of corruption? And I have said, my observation is that when every new government comes, corruption is worse than the previous regime. And so I'm not surprised that today things are worse than before. Today we are facing an economic crisis, a large portion of which can be blamed on corruption, unbridled loans and misuse of those loans, and as somebody described as reckless spending. Even as we are talking about haircuts and depriving people of their monies, first, the banking cleanup. Up to date, there are some people who have not still recovered their monies. Then we are now talking about haircuts. And yet, we are going around promising new programs and launching new initiatives. And you wonder, is it because we are approaching 2024? Or we just don't have priorities, we don't know what we are about as a country? The attention now should be to cut down on expenditure and see how best we can handle our debt situation.
And that's an interesting point you make, because even in this situation, we're still, if you look at our budget, we're still overshooting in terms of expenditure by over 60 billion Ghana cedis. And where we'll get that money from, time will tell. But let's get into the report. Placing 72nd, scoring 43 puts us in some not too comfortable company. We're rubbing shoulders with the likes of Benin and South Africa. But I would like to highlight what Transparency International's Delia Ferreira Rubio, chair of Transparency International, says for this year's theme, which focuses on corruption, conflict, and security. She says, quote, "Corruption has made our world a more dangerous place. As governments have collectively failed to make progress against it, they fuel the current rise in violence and conflict and endanger people everywhere. The only way out is for states to do the hard work, rooting out corruption at all levels to ensure governments work for all people, not just an elite few." From Ghana to Ukraine, and I've followed stories about Ukraine and even their own drive in combating Russia, the aggressor, and how some corruption has come to bear there. We know in Ghana we bleed some 4 to 6 billion. At a point in time, the finance minister said we lost 4 billion every year to corruption. But when you look at other parts of the report, you look at the countries making the best progress in Africa. Look at the gap. Seychelles scored 70. Cabo Verde, or Cape Verde, scored 60. Botswana, 60. Rwanda, 51. And again, we keep talking about the Rwandan principle. Burundi, 17. On the other end, you have Burundi scoring 17, Equatorial Guinea scoring 17, South Sudan scoring 13, Somalia scoring 12. You look at both sides of it, but come back to where we find ourselves. You would see significant improvement for some countries: Angola, the Ivory Coast, Ethiopia, Kenya, Senegal, Seychelles, and Tanzania. Unfortunately, in Ghana, we seem to have plateaued. Over the last 3 years, we've pumped money supposedly in fighting corruption, the Office of the Special Prosecutor, among others, with nothing to show. Why do you think that is, Mr. Azim?
You see, I think one of the reasons is that I think that our political system is one of the reasons. When you give all powers to the president, one person, to appoint virtually everybody that matters in this country, it used to be ministers and maybe heads of institutions. But it has trickled down to other management staff, including PROs to various institutions. And also appointing unnecessary people in the presidency. Everybody feels obligated to the president, and by implication, his ruling party. And so you tend to do what you think they want. They may not even directly do things in a certain way, but because you perceive that this is the best way to do it, to please them, you may do it that way. The other aspect of it is that you do things because you know that the president, who is your brother or father or whatever, will not do anything to you. And the smart ones, when they steal some money, they go and give some to the party or to the appointing authorities. And so nothing happens to them. So part of the problem is we don't have a leadership that is committed to the fight against corruption. But the other panelists also talked about the morality. When you see people that are ready, not Ghanaians, Africans, ready to take somebody to kill the person because of money, then you can imagine that the country is really in a serious mess. And some of these people are able to get off the hook. So lack of enforcement of the laws, lack of sanctions against people that have been found to have engaged in corruption, lack of serious investigations and possible prosecutions, no recovery of stolen monies and all that. You see, the whole thing is that our leadership is not giving us the right leadership in the fight against corruption. And I believe that is the main problem. And why is it like that? Because some of the leaders are also implicated in some of these corrupt deals as well. And when you are implicated, either directly or indirectly, you cannot take action when allegations are put on your table for you to take action on.
I'll come to you, Professor Ajimandria, on the same point. With so much that we claim to have done in the fight against corruption, we even heard our president speak of implementing the ANAS principle. And now it would appear from some of the rhetoric we've heard that we're running away from that. When you look at the investments in the office of the special prosecutor, among others, and you look at the results we're getting, why do you think we are here and not making any progress in terms of not just corruption perception? Because if you recall, last year, the Ghana Statistical Service, in consonance with other institutions, UN agencies, among others, had a corruption reality index, so to speak. And that also showed even worse rot going on. What is your thinking on this?
Let me go quickly back to your earlier question to my good friend Azim. When you cited from the report of the GII and placing Ghana and citing those countries. Interestingly, from that report, you notice that the countries in Africa at the bottom, that's the sub-Saharan African countries, at the bottom of the index are all conflict-ridden countries. Conflict-ridden countries. And then those countries you mentioned on top, like Seychelles and Cape Verde and Botswana and Rwanda, are relatively peaceful countries. You see, you have to learn something from there. Then you think of Ghana. We are not conflict-ridden, by the grace of God, I should say. We are commended for being perhaps the most peaceful country in the sub-region. We are not engaged in any war. So why is it that we are not improving in the fight against corruption, whereas those who are peaceful are on top of the index. That's very interesting. And that's why I link to Azim's point about the political system that we have created that has given centralized power and personified everything around the leadership. So maybe that's not the issue for discussions now, but it relates very much to that. Okay. So if you're asking, what do we do, or how come this country is unable to fight it? Again, I mentioned earlier, three things will fight corruption. 3: laws, institutions, and human beings. And we are short, very short on the third factor. We are very short. And I don't need to repeat what I've stated earlier regarding bankruptcy of morals and all. But the fact is that we will have to really have, by the way, before I go on, let's say that in all these matters, changing societies, at times it takes one person. That's why we all put premium on the leadership. Yesterday, I heard you, my good friend, and other media discussing this school placement and the fact that people are paying $20,000 to get their kids into schools and all. So corruption is not just the technocrats or the bureaucrats or the so-called political leaders. It is endemic in the society that we have created. And that creation comes from the system that we have created and how we have created systems that make it possible for people to take advantage, you see. So it's a tough issue. And at times I'm uncomfortable because this is an issue, at least since I entered the civil society space back in 1998. This issue every year is raised and debated. So maybe, henceforth, let's look at how we get out of it. What I saw some recommendations by the Ghana Integrity Initiative. Some of them interesting, others I was just laughing because it's the same rehashing. Government should do this. Why can't government do that for 30 years? You know, so it becomes academic. And I'm not in academia anymore, so I don't delight in pedantic and academic stuff. The fact is that you need someone who can tell you, have the courage to sanction the one who has committed a crime. We don't have any. The only time in our Fourth Republic that I believe some politicians were put in jail for corruption was during former President Kufuor's rule. Of course, people will disagree why they were sent to jail, but I'm just stating a fact that that was the only period some politicians were tried by competent courts and sentenced, and they served time. That's the only time.
I also recall, I just forget his name, under Mahama, that gentleman. His name just escapes me.
Peleo, not Abedi Peleo, but a name like that. Yes, I remember. You're right. Yes, thanks for raising that. So yes, that's also very true, you see. But if you look at the cacophony over corruption allegations, everybody cries corruption when they are in opposition. Everybody. Cry corruption when they are in opposition. And it's there. I'm not belittling the fact that we are corrupt people. Headmasters are corrupt, as we find with these school admissions. We can go on and on and on. Go to the hospitals.
The DVLA, we came out with a report on them, though it goes back to around 2019. I mean, all our state institutions and all of that, from the police service, and you can't say all of them, but it's in there. But gentlemen, to wrap the conversation, I'll give you a minute each. There's an interesting thought as well, because when you look at the latest ranking, in sub-Saharan Africa, Ghana places 8th, even with our woeful performance. I mean, you look at Denmark, that topped the chart this year. Let me just see, they scored, what, 90? You look at New Zealand, among others, Finland, scoring in the 70s, among others, and we are scoring 43. It tells you we have a long way to go. But we're not doing that badly in sub-Saharan Africa. How do we find middle ground? In a minute each. I'll stay with you, Prof, for your final thoughts, and then go to Mr. Azim.
How do you find a middle ground? First, we need an effective leadership, a leader who is committed, not just by words, but committed. But you see,
are you saying we don't have
Ghana,
that?
If we did, I'm sure we wouldn't be making this conversation today. You know, the commitment is normally oral. They say it, rhetoric. But the commitment is shown more in the results. If somebody is corrupt, you have the laws, you apply the laws, and the law finds the person corrupt and jails the person. That shows the level of commitment. We don't get that in this country. And I'm afraid that is really, besides the fact of really seeking to change our system, the political system is corrupt. The political system itself is corrupt, is breeding corruption. Election, don't you hear, my good friend? People go and pay delegates to be selected to run for parliament in both political parties. The corruption is, look, that's what I'm saying. At times I feel like wasting time even talking about this because, look, everybody knows. Corruption is go to parliament. At times some laws are passed, bills are passed after parliamentarians have been paid. And I'm saying this publicly. They can challenge me on that. They take it. And then you stand and say, you are corrupt, you are corrupt. They're politicians, look. There's so much dishonesty in this country. It's sad. Thank you.
Thank you, too, for being this open and this patriotic, speaking truth as it is. Professor Bafo Agyemangua is CEO of the John Agyekum Kufuor Foundation. Thank you so much, sir, for your time. And we also have Vitus Azim, an anti-graft campaigner. Over to you for your final words, Mr. Azim.
We have the laws, but some of the laws are weakness. Look at the Asset Declaration Law. Up to date, it hasn't got regulations because Parliament does not want to include verification and public disclosure. In some countries, it's called an asset disclosure regime. How do you just write a list of things or even a blank sheet of paper, put in an envelope and drop it with the Auditor General? You need to publicly disclose, and the Auditor General needs to be able to verify that you actually have those assets. That is a weakness in the law. Look at how long it took to pass the Right to Information Bill. Today, we have a Public Officers Code of Conduct bill pending in Parliament up to 5 years now. It's not being passed. So even though we have the laws, our parliamentarians are not willing to provide adequate, to strengthen those laws. That's number one. Then number two goes to the executive and the anti-corruption agencies, enforcing the laws. You mentioned there's corruption in the police, in this place, in this place. But who is the final authority to act on those acts of corruption? It is the leadership, the executive, the president and his ministers and his institutions. And if the president does not have that commitment to deal with it, it continues to be with us and it is worsening. So we need a committed leadership, as Prof has said. And that commitment is lacking as of today. We need to go back and look at that. But of course, as citizens too, we need to play our role. If people didn't go to offer bribes to the education, those doing work on the computerized placement system, they wouldn't take those monies. They would have been compelled to sit down and do the right thing. But people are going to offer them bribes, monies, for favors. If you are arrested by the police and you don't go there, you say, well, I've done the wrong thing, I'm ready to be taken to court. The police cannot take money from you. So we, the citizens, too, have a role to play, to resist corruption, to be willing to go by the law. We are not doing that. Until we're able to do that, and not only condemn, but also to report acts of corruption that we have encountered or seen, then as a country, we are still not succeeding in the struggle against corruption. Thank you.
Thank you too. Mr. Vitus Azim is an anti-graft campaigner, and I think based on what these two gentlemen have shared with us, we have a fair idea of where we find ourselves when it comes to graft and the fight against it. And maybe no wonder, or little wonder, we're making very little progress, if any at all, on the CPI, the Corruption Perception Index. But moving on from there, we've got AM Business, courtesy of EcoBank, the Pan-African Bank. In today's edition, some aggrieved customers of defunct First Fund have threatened to take legal action against the Board of Directors and the Securities and Exchange Commission for their locked up funds. Here's what they had to share.
These are some aggrieved customers contemplating on the way forward after their monies have been locked up for months. In November 2019, the Securities and Exchange Commission, through a press release, revoked the licenses of some mutual fund managers for which First Bank Limited, managers of First Fund, were affected. These customers were given assurance that they won't be affected by the revocation of the licenses of First Bank Financial Services. Thus, SEC will ensure that they are migrated to a new fund manager.
So when it was revoked in 2019 to the whole of 2021, we're just talking about the principal because there was no interest being accrued to that account. Then in December of 2021, TTL also handed it over to, with the approval of SEC, handed it over to Octane DC. We're not hearing anything from Octane DC, so we went to meet the Octane DC, the fund manager, Juan Solomon, at their offices in East Legon. And they informed us that they have done some of the search. They've done some work on their account. They realized that the board had done some bad investments. They've also done some investments. Some of the investments, there are no documentations to assess it. However, they've been able to work out to receive about 8 million from the receiver that received the First Bank Financial Service, and they were waiting for the board to have an annual general meeting and appoint an auditor because Ghana Commercial Bank, which were the custodians of their 8 million cedis, needed those documentation in order to release that amount of money. It must be put on record that the redemptions that were given to us in August 2021 amounted to just 1 million Ghana cedis. So therefore, if there is 8 million sitting in an account, that can be given to us to at least mitigate the impacts of the economic hardship on us. We would appreciate it, but it seems the board is not forthcoming because we also feel that they may want us to believe, or all of us to forget the money so that clandestinely they may also go and take the money. But it can also be that we have pensioners in our midst. Some of them have eventually passed away. In our last press conference that we did in 2021 in TTL office, some of the pensioners indicated that they couldn't even buy drugs. And these are monies they've invested to recoup their interest during their pensions. So if they cannot get access to this money, then we are just sending them to their early graves. So that has been the genesis of our problem.
In the last quarter of 2020, TTL Limited was appointed fund manager for First Fund. In August 2021, TTL Limited paid them a paltry 8% of First Fund customers' investments. Octane DC Limited took over the management of the fund from 2021.
For my story, it's very sad. I don't know if you have time, if you can go through my story. Yeah. I invested with First Bank in September 2nd, 2019. That is when I invested with them. So I invested 100,000 Ghana cedis. The document is here. You can have a copy and look through it so that it wouldn't be like I'm calling things from my head. So it was supposed to mature April 2020. So I went to their office to tell them the maturity time is almost due, so they should give, I will take the money. Because I had plans of relocating from Accra to Kumasi and start my I was doing farm small, so I wanted to go back to Kumasi and continue with the farm in a full-scale manner because I wanted to move from Accra. Yeah. So that is why I lodged the money with them for only 6 months. So when the money matured and I went to them that it is almost due, I went there 2 days before the maturity time that it's almost due. So what is the process I need to go through so that I can redeem my money? And they were like, okay, when the time I should go, since the time is not up, I should go and come when the time is up. Okay. So I went, when the time was up, I came back to them and they were like, they are having financial challenges. So out of the 100,000, as at the time of maturity, I was supposed, I have misplaced the last statement I got from First Bank before it collapsed. That time I was having an amount of 109,000 Ghana cedis. This was the last but one statement I got from First Bank before it collapsed. But the last one I got from them before it collapsed, the amount on it was 109,000 Ghana cedis. Here we are, the money has matured. Give me my money. You are saying you are having financial challenges, so you can only honor 20,000 out of 109,000 cedis. If you were Manchu, will you agree to this thing?
Yeah, that would be really
So we agreed on a day to meet the board. Yeah. So I've forgotten the name of the man because this thing has really affected me a lot. Because if you look at the amount, and believe me, let me chip this one in. Within that year, that was not the only investment I lost within that year. I lost 16,000 to First SH Life Assurance Company, which was owned by this man, the man who was the CEO of Capital Bank.
According to Jeff, it appears the problem is coming from the board of directors.
Yes, that is what is happening. From what I have read, from what my friend had briefed me about what is going on, because we have formed more or less a group, and we have executives who are taking care of some of these things, and they have informed us. I'm aware that it is a board, and Octane DC has confirmed that it is a board that is not forthcoming over this whole issue. Because my question is, First Bank said they invested in government bonds and other securities. Even before Ghana is on the verge of acquiring a bailout from IMF, and government want to touch pensioners' bond and other stuff, First Bank made us, fast forward, TTL Capital made us understand that they invested in government bonds, but the receiver hasn't received the money, and that is why they are unable to pay up.
According to these customers, they've been treated by the regulator, board of the fund, and Octane DC Limited with disdain and utmost disrespect.
I think you can see the frustration from which these people are talking. And it's been 4 years of following up for our monies, legitimate investments. And come to think of it, this is a company that was adjudged the best financial management firm in Ghana for 5 years running. So who would have thought that this company will go down in a second? And again, this is a company whose license was renewed 2 weeks before it was revoked. So we had a lot of confidence that we're dealing with, a legally registered company. So we never had any doubt that we're dealing with a company who were doing something untoward. And even if they were doing anything untoward, who is to know? It's the regulator. And so there are a lot of frustrations. There are some who don't know. And I want to thank JoyNews, because ever since this issue came out, you have always been on our side to give us the opportunity to be heard. I think the regulator can do a lot more. When this issue broke out in 2018 ending, one of the issues that we found out from the regulator was that one of the reasons that we have gotten to where we are is because they are understaffed. We were told that their total staff is 65, including cleaners. And so they were not able to do the necessary, the follow-up that they need to do. And so companies were there and investing in commercial beyond the threshold that they are supposed. So that is one of the reasons why we are where we are. And so what we expect from our regulator, led by Reverend Ogbami, is that we have written to SEC severally. Unfortunately, they've not acted on our behalf. So TTL took over. It took them almost 2 years for them to have the funds reconciled. 2 years. When they came, we were told that they could no longer take over Another company, Octane DC, was appointed. As we speak, Octane has not engaged us. There hasn't been an AGM. And what we are seeing is that the board is just using these transitions to buy time.
Several letters, according to these customers, to SEC and the board for a meeting have been ignored. In August 2022, the leadership of First Fund customers engaged the fund manager, Octane DC Limited, for a discussion centered on the management of the fund and any possible redemptions. They explained that they were provided with data that showed the status of the fund and how documents of some investment portfolios could not be assessed, but since then, nothing has been done. The bigger question is how these customers cope with the current economic challenges.
We have sent letters to the board. I'll give you copies of it. We have sent letters to Securities and Exchange Commission. We have met Reverend Ogbamitete in his office. He will just be giving you stories and coupled with scriptures. We've written a letter to the board more than twice. I'll share all this. Nobody is even, they are not even giving us the courtesy to even mind us or even respond to those. They don't care. That's what I see from them.
Michael says things are really hard, though he works. He tells me their hard-earned investments have yielded 0% interest since November 2019. Also, they are not having access to their principal.
Spoken about pensioners. Now, let me look at you as an individual, as a young man who is also trying to, cope with this current economic hardship. How is it impacting on you?
It has been very bad because I started with First Fund in 2013, and I was using the money to pay my school fees and then also my rent. So, in the height of COVID, they revoked the license in 2019. COVID came around in 2020. I had to pay 2 years rent. It was just difficult because you save for a rainy day, and when it is during the rainy day, you can't even access that money. So you will be paid at the end of the month from your meager salary, and you cannot even spend it because you have to go and give all that money to a landlord. And that has been the challenge. It has been very challenging. We intend publishing the images of the board of directors online. They owe us money. They have a fiduciary responsibility towards us. So if you are not forthcoming with them, we'll start sharing their images online. We've done investigation. We know where each and every one lives. We will also go and occupy their various homes, because if we cannot have peace in our homes, we will also make sure that you also don't have peace in your various homes. So these are kind of some of the things. As for legal options, we are still exploring the legal options. We are still in almost in discussion with lawyer Martin Kpegbu and other civil rights-based lawyers or human rights lawyers to see how far we can go.
George is unable to access his over 100,000 Ghana cedis.
I think that is the only way for, Ghana is a sovereign nation and it's a democratic country, managed with a constitution. So I think if the legal way is the way we can get our money, why not? Because this thing has affected me very, very much. Sometimes when I tell people what I have gone through as a result of this money locked up, you don't want to know. You don't want to know.
I should believe you are married.
Yeah, I'm married.
And how are you taking care of your family?
Right now, somebody who could have afforded an Uber car, a car on my own. Right now, I'm doing work and pay. I've gone to acquire somebody's car and I'm doing work and pay to sustain myself and my family. You get the point? Yeah. This is the letter First Bank gave me before the collapse, that if I give them 6 months, they will give me all my money. So this is the letter signed by the CEO. This is the letter. And that time elapsed, and I called them. 2 days for me to go and take my money. There was news on the radio that SEC has revoked the license of First Bank. I nearly collapsed that day.
Wow.
I was at work, my former workplace. I was at work. My boss had to ask me to go home, because upon what I told him, my monies that has been locked up with First Bank, with what I had at SH Life Assurance, and not to even mention Men's Good. And what was happening at that material time, my boss asked me to go home because of, I nearly collapsed that day.
Kobina is asking government, SEC and the board of directors to get them their principals.
We just expect them to act and ensure that these board members, headed by Professor Dodonu, are doing the right thing. They don't care. We have written to engage them. They don't care about us. We've sent the memo to SEC about how we are being treated. Unfortunately, we are yet to hear from them.
These customers believe that the difficulties shareholders are going through can be blamed on the board of First Fund Limited. For Joy Business, James Ishin.
Well, here we are back, and before we cap off the show, we'll bring you some details of a fire incident at Ebuakwa in the Ashanti region, which has killed 3 people. It is unclear what caused the inferno, but eyewitnesses say they found a woman shielding 2 children from the fire after dousing the flame. Love FM's Nanayao Jima joins us with updates. Nanayao, walk us through what exactly has been happening in this shock fire incident. Hello, Nanayao. Well, we have that incident in Ebuakwa in the Ashanti region where a woman, 3 people are said to have been affected by a fire. And Nanayao Jima.
Behind me is the scene of the fire incident, the house that has been engulfed by fire. That was engulfed by fire somewhere around 3 a.m. And the information we have so far is that 3 people died in the fire incident. That is a mother, a 29-year-old mother, and her 2 children, one 6 years and the other 10 years. They are all still in there. The police are here and they are trying to establish the cause of the fire. They've started their investigation. So that's the reason why they are here to convey the body of the deceased from this area. So you can see a number of people from the community gathered here. It's a very sad moment for everyone here in the community. It is unclear the reason for or how the fire started, but the information that we've been able to gather is that it started somewhere around 3 a.m. And the house had 5 people occupying the house at the time. So out of the 5 people, the information that we have so far is that out of the 5 people, 2 of them were able to run to safety, but unfortunately the mother and her 2 children couldn't get out of the house. Now, the information that we've been able to gather from some people who were here at the time of the incident is that the family tried getting out of their room, but unfortunately they had enforced the door so much that they couldn't break out of the room. Also, the people outside at that time, the volunteers who had come to try rescue the family, also tried whatever they could do to ensure that they break the door open and get into the house. But unfortunately, the enforcement were so much that the door enforcement was so much that they couldn't get out of the house. What I'm learning is that this house in particular, have experienced 2 different robbery incidents in the past 1 month. So it's one of the reasons why they've enforced their doors so much to prevent another break-in. And this is how the people, the rescue team who came around, found it very difficult to break into the room and rescue the 3 people who were there. So unfortunately, they were all killed by this fire incident. I have some people who were here at dawn when the incident was unfolding, and they will be able to, give us some more details about what happened. Mami, Yako, Arehose mani pe wa hanyina na ahomache no na adnisi no obehu bi na sena nesiti.
Ya tenti atemu ya no mu fie nso na baba ho nti ya tenti atemu no ana me kunu bie epono enti na mesumi di akire etimi hu ya ne se eja ni demu wo efie ho ɛne ɛteatea mu sɛ nipa mlo fire service formula na kyɛ sɛ ntɛm ha deɛ nipa baba bɛgu ha fightia sɛ ɛnke bɛtumi ayi wɔ mu apie ɛnso yɛyɛya yɛntimi me kunu de edua apempono no antemafo mema ne ma enyina ye bia se enka wo mu betimi aye den ebupunu nani eso ntumi mu punu na omu kokofa pumping machine na fire service ne mai omu kofa pumping machine e de be fire efie wasa chire na fire service de baaye entintam ha no mode de omu be ya na no ma yansan ko omu pre abi ne ma no enso owuo kurade a enkwantume nye saa na siye
nti omu try so mbebu dan no
ombebu dan nani enso wo mu antimi emu dan nani.
So she is telling me that there were a number of people here trying to rescue the family. They tried to break into the room, but unfortunately they couldn't. So it was later that a neighbor brought in a pump machine, and with that pump machine they were able to douse the flame. That was when they could get access into the room, but at the time everything was, the lady was dead. Everything was over at the time. So she is rather commending the neighbors for what they did this morning, trying to save the family. Now, Mami, I say nani pa mienu bi esa kan ho musu tifia omuso wen.
Maame no ne ka akire. Omu de no omu dadan fufurum. Eti ne ba ne tiam ka se ma eja tofia ho na maame ne ba panyin ne ba ketwa no omu no fa omu no edable epi abonten ejina da se da eja ne free ne ba ne dem ho no mo ene na eba.
Okay, so I was asking about the two other occupants of the house, and she is explaining that these are relatives of the deceased family. So at dawn, the two heard the loud cry from the apartment that was destroyed, and they came out before the fire could spread to their house. So they are alive and they've been taken to safety. So I'll try to speak to some of the family members who are here this morning to mourn their dead, or to see how the family died, and also try put things in order to ensure that the police pick the body and take it to a safe place for keeping. Mami, mema yako. Na odi ene busuyen.
Me ba no no. Me nua be mami odi machi, ne ba na ewu.
Na asam ne se na musiti no.
Me anaba na me phone bele, be phone. Me phone bele se sister. Sorry na me ni ha na. Esi me fie ni shi, e be girl ne ma me ashi. E wa na me fa aka me do me ka ba. Me ba so no kwasem ni. E no kure se o mu fie ni nyina ahye. Me ba no ahye, ne me nana no me enu nyina so asa ahye. Aka ho enye ketwa enkure ba mpontam ha sei na da bia ni ho kole ne ma me de ba ketekete wo ma bre mpontam ha papa nya ketwa enso obonefo aye se o wi o ma no pa ne anwumra sa aka che ne se mu de ensan ampa se ensan se na wo twe ne nura na obeka se mo ensan ene ade chi ne ya eja to fia ha nkura ni nyina atimi ahye no
comfort ata mu
5 times omu ba ne yakọ ye ba ne yakọ ba akokura de oba ye wose wone ne maame na ne kunu ne ma ne na be tu be busu me be mienu ne ye sa de di bronya na anu gu atwe ne nura omu sa ba se mo ensan ampa se ensan ya ade chi ya na efie nyina ejati mi atomo ahye no enti asema ho no mu be hunu ya na sa na tie ne me ekoso no akuma kura ya kura ba mfi entamu ha wo ya kete no wanyina wo mamu mienu ene eja fran ma be fra me na me be amana awuo
abusan fo mamu yako na ma me di ne sen
e fra me mansa.
So she is the auntie of the deceased. That's the younger brother of the father of the deceased, and according to her, she had information that the house was on fire, so she had to come and see what is happening. And she's explaining to me that the house or the residents have been under attack on several occasions by armed robbers, and it's the reason why they've strengthened or enforced their doors. And they are very sad by the situation, because to have several robbery attacks, that's about 5 in a matter of time, and for this incident to happen is very unfortunate. So family is very, very worried. Now, information that we have so far is that this dawn, the fire service was here to help douse the flame, or help douse the fire. Now, we have information that the regional fire commander and his team are also coming to the scene to have a further inspection and commence investigation into the matter. Now, this is the second time the Ashanti region is seeing such a terrible news. Somewhere 2 weeks ago, we have a police officer, his wife, and another child also dying in a similar incident at the police barracks at Apromase, and various or series of fire incidents have been recorded in the Ashanti region since the beginning of the year. So when the fire service gets to the scene, we'll speak to them and establish the common element that runs through these fire incidents that we've been recording in the Ashanti region.
And that is my colleague with Love FM, Nanaya Ojima, joining us with updates there. It's a bit of a sad way to end the morning's conversations on that note. But the police, obviously, on hand, investigating the matter and getting, hopefully, into the issue so that we can find whatever may have happened. And if there are any perpetrators behind it, also get to the bottom of that matter. Our condolences to those affected, the entire family. But before we go, we do know the news review is brought to you by Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. We're offering free prostate screening and free female fertility screening. You can locate them in Accra around Spintex opposite the Shell signboard, in Kumasi, in Kronum, Abuehia behind Angel Educational Complex, in Takrade at Anaji Estate in Tema Community 2, Techiman Hansua and Esiama in Nzema. Call 0244 867 086 or 0274 234 2321. I beg your pardon. 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. And on that note, we cap off the show. But before I take a sip of water, water is life. Awake is premium purified water treated through a strict purification process to ensure that every bottle on the market refreshes you better. We have the perfect sizes for all purposes. 330, 500 ml bottles to fit your pockets and bags. 750 ml for the heavy drinkers and 1.5 liters for those who always want more. Our 19-liter jar bottles are ideal for offices and homes. All you must do now is drink Awake purified drinking water wherever you go. So choose a bottle of Awake purified drinking water today and get quality hydration. Awake purified drinking water, one for life. Remember, for every bottle you buy, an amount is donated to the National Cardiothoracic Center. It's another quality product by Casapreco Company Limited. For bulk purchases, call 0262 351 251. This advert is FDA approved. Ghana, for this show is multimedia approved. On that note, we're glad to have served you another morning of breakfast. Stay with us. Joy News Desk up next on this network. Do stay for that.